or resume. All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome to our ISACA Local Government Sector Day. And this time it's brought to you by Municipal Finance Authority, just like last year. And before I pass it off to Renata to lead the way for this event, I'm just going to do a quick intro on behalf of ISACA. And for those of you that don't know, ISACA Vancouver, some of you may know about the ISACA certifications like the CISA or CSIM, but ISACA Vancouver goes far beyond that, and we've actually helped build one of the largest cybersecurity communities in Western Canada here in BC. And that includes having programs like these sector days where we take people in each sector and do a sector day for that sector. We have mentorship programs, She Leads Tech programs, scholarship, diversity inclusion programs, and we are all volunteer based. So it is a big lift and a quite a big organization for the amount of volunteers that we have. One other thing that I'd like to mention is that if you check our LinkedIn page, we do have our BC Cyber Excellence Award nominations coming up, or they're actually already out there, and I'm going to send a link here as well. But if you know a CISO, a community leader, or a practitioner that's making a difference in the cybersecurity space, please nominate them. We really want to shine a light on these people. So when I'll send a couple links to our calendar, I'll send a link to the nomination form. And with that, I'll pass it off to Renata.
Great. Thank you so much, Anthony. I would like to welcome everybody on behalf of the Municipal Finance Authority to this event. We have been the sponsor for this for several years now. And people always ask me, why is somebody who comes from an organization called the Municipal Finance Authority sponsoring a cybersecurity event? So we, in addition to doing all the long-term lending for all the municipalities in British Columbia, we also do investment products, and we consider our third pillar after those two to be support for education. We're, of course, very concerned about risk in the local government sector, and cyber risk is one of the biggest risks to this area of any area. We seem to have the most exposure, I guess you could say. And as a financial institution, we are doubly exposed. So ISACA putting on this event is a fantastic lift for our sector, and I appreciate everyone attending and all the speakers who've agreed to join us today. So with that, I'm going to kick it off to our first group. I'm very excited about this session because, as I was just saying to our speakers, I'm going to be learning from them today too. So we're going to hear from two rising cyber stars and their coach. Hawkeye, Fyvie, and Liam Skelton have created a program of cybersecurity for their organization, which is the College of New Caledonia, and they did that from the ground up. These two enterprising teammates, with the advice and support of their fantastic cybersecurity and leadership coach, Dominic Vogel, transitioned from service desk roles to cybersecurity champions. Welcome, Hawkeye, Liam, and Dominic.
Thank you very much, Renata. Thank you everyone for joining us. I know it's quite early, 9 in the morning here. Thank you all for joining us. Bear with me here while I bring up my little slide deck. There we go. Okay. Hopefully everyone's able to see that there. Welcome everyone. Today, as Renata said, we're going to be discussing building your cybersecurity program up from the ground up. So once again, hi, my name's Liam Skelton. I'm one of the two cybersecurity analysts at the College of New Caledonia. I've been at the college for about 5 years now. My first 2 years were on the service desk. My third year, I spent as a systems analyst, and then my last 2 years, I've been a cybersecurity analyst. So before we get started, I'll pass along to my colleague Hawkeye to introduce himself.
Hey everybody, my name is Hawkeye. As Liam said, I'm one of the other two cybersecurity analysts at the college. I've been with the college for almost 2 years now, worked on service desk for about a year and a half. Just recently moved into a cybersecurity role within the last, I want to say, year. And I mean, yeah, it's been great. It's been a great experience working with Liam and putting up the program. So I'll pass it to Dom.
Morning, everyone. My name is Dominic Vogel. I have the pleasure of not just being friends with Hawkeye and Liam, but of being their cyber coach for the past few years. And I've been in cybersecurity for over 20 years now. And while I could talk about myself at length, I won't. But the gist of it is that my goal is to really focus on building cyber programs with amazing people like Hawkeye and Liam, and in the role as a cyber coach for organizations, both public and private, right across North America.
Awesome. Thank you, Dom. So before we get started, I just wanted to kind of give everyone a bit of an overview of what we're going to be talking about today. So we're mainly going to be sharing kind of our experiences, some stories, some examples of our time in trying to build up a cybersecurity program. We'll be touching on some frameworks, some of the tools and some of the methods that we've used over the years to build up our cybersecurity program, and sharing some stories with everyone. And then we'll have a kind of Q&A for you guys to ask us questions, ask us more specifics about some of our stories, and we can share that with you. So we'll get started. And our first slide here, I will give away to Hawkeye.
Yeah, so accessibility. So when we talk about accessibility in cybersecurity, really what we're talking about is talent. So how do you get into the field? How do you build teams? Should you look externally? Should you look internally? There are a lot of different factors. For me, I think the most important piece in investing in a cyber team and making it accessible is looking from the inside. And there are a number of reasons for that. The first being that if you're already in an organization, you have a great understanding of the risks associated with that organization, and anything else that might help you in that role, and understanding how people may respond to, say, an awareness program, how people may respond to, say, an alert, what your IT team might look like, and how you can kind of interweave into the institution. So when we look at investing in teams, I think it's really important to invest in the talent that you have and foster those relationships, like Liam and I have at the College of New Caledonia, and grow them into that role to really sort of thrive. Liam, I'm not sure what your thoughts are there.
Yeah, so I started out at the college on the service desk. I started at the college answering phones for one of their semester intakes, and then I just never left. So I think starting on service desk gives you a really unique perspective of the organization, and it's quite the shift when you go from a service desk role to a systems role to a cyber analyst role. And I think that being on the service desk and being one of those people who, you're known as the person who comes around and fixes problems. That's your main goal, right? Is coming around to fix things. So having that trust with your organization really helps when you're starting up a program like this, because people are already used to seeing you. They already have a very good opinion that you're the person here to help them. So when you're launching something new, that definitely helps a lot. Dom, I know you have some thoughts on sort of the team building aspect of cybersecurity.
Absolutely, and putting this from the lens of, if you're a IT manager, IT director, CIO, and you're building out this cyber function, one of my big beliefs is open up your talent pipelines. Far too many managers and leaders wait for these vacancies, right? You should always be recruiting. And when you're going in the stage of recruiting and looking for this type of talent, it's important to be able to tap into diverse sources, right? So Liam and Hawkeye came internally, albeit from different teams within IT. So look internally within IT, look internally within the organization, even outside of IT, nearby schools, extended professional networks, professional partnerships. It's something that, like I said, I see far too often as a problem, in that far too many managers and leaders wait for the talent to come to them. You cannot do that in this day and age. If you want to build a great team from the team up, you always have to be recruiting. Open up those talent pipelines. And second piece, at least in regards to where we are in the discussion right now, you need to build what I call a magnetic brand. I'm a huge believer in brand building. It's something that most IT people absolutely suck at. And I'm being polite in saying that. It's important to build a brand, to create a workplace, a culture that people aspire to join, right? If you build up that cybersecurity function, a cyber brand, as something that people want to join, just like how Hawkeye and Liam have done now at the College of New Caledonia, it has a very strong brand at the college, right? Future people or people in the organization want to join that growing team. And as a leader, your job is to be able to remove barriers, remove the weeds that are preventing growth, nurture the talent, be a mentor, be a leader, don't be a gatekeeper. Again, one of the big problems I still see with a lot of IT leaders is that they're not allowing for enough growth for people, right? They're looking for that unicorn, the person who has 10 years of experience in a piece of technology that's only been around for 2 years. You need to be a nurturer of talent. You need to be a mentor. You need to be a supporter. You need to be someone who empowers. Don't be a gatekeeper. If you want to get a truly magnetic brand, a magnetic team, like I said, you have to be a true mentor and leader, not a gatekeeper.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely, Dom. And I mean, I think you touched on a few great points there, and I think we're going to cover this sort of next in our slides. But around the branding piece, and you sort of touched on it, Liam, about being known in the institution is approachability. I think it's really important to be approachable. You definitely don't want people in your institution to be used sort of as the cybersecurity police that only show up when they get an alert on their device. I think that makes it a bit tricky. And the other piece of moving from a service desk role into a cybersecurity role, and something that I see being a lot of roadblocks for people, is that experience. Although it's incredibly important to have experience and have that drive and have that talent to be in the field, realistically, service desk is a mile wide but an inch deep. You know a little bit about everything, at least in my experience, and I believe also in yours, Liam. Cybersecurity, I'd say, is very similar in that it's a mile wide, but also a mile deep. You need to know a lot about a lot of different fields, and I think that can, in some ways, discourage people. And Renat, I believe you touched on this prior to our slides here. But cybersecurity is wide. It's a wide open field. There's so many different ways you can go into it, and so many different ways that you can pivot and shape your career and shape your brand. So I think in terms of accessibility, don't be discouraged by that sort of mile-wide field. Understand that there are a lot of different opportunities available. And if you have that drive, and if you have that talent, and if you have a great coach like Dom, and a GOAT like Liam on your team, generally you're set up to sort of get into that field and hit the ground running. So.
And if I just want to add one more thing on sort of the last point on the slide here, is that cybersecurity is a lot of fun. It's a really engaging career path. There is, again, because of that huge scope of what you can end up doing, there's a lot of really great areas that really need people to specialize in. So I think a lot of people have this conception that cybersecurity, you have to master everything, but that's not necessarily true. You can really specialize in certain areas and deliver a lot of really great value to your organization.
Hey, awesome. So I think we've covered that piece. So we could probably flip over to the next topic here. I think, Liam, you're introducing this one.
Yes. So I want to talk a little bit about building a sustainable cybersecurity culture, and how you fit that into your organization, especially in the context of where that organization might not have had a cybersecurity culture. And it's quite the task. It's quite the challenge. Slide here. So I won't lie to you guys. In terms of creating that culture and kind of kickstarting it, a lot of that is going to come from the cybersecurity team or the IT team, depending how your organization is structured. A lot of that will start with you, but that doesn't mean that it's just you that's going to be carrying that torch. Cybersecurity is something that affects the entire organization. So it's not something that any one person is going to be kind of growing and shepherding through the entire organization. You might be the ones starting it. You might be the ones addressing risks and bringing that to your leadership. But you really need your whole organization to respond to those risks, to understand why we're actually doing cybersecurity, why we're trying to develop a cybersecurity culture, and why it's important. So I'll give you an example from the college and from the early days of our cybersecurity program. So a couple of years ago, one of the first things we rolled out when I joined on the cybersecurity team was our cybersecurity awareness and phishing simulation service. And I'm sure we're all very familiar with cybersecurity phishing simulations, getting those emails trying to trick you into clicking links, or being assigned cyber awareness training. And it's something that a lot of people in organizations view as a burden, a task that they have to go through, where it's like, oh no, I got a cyber phishing email I clicked on. Now I have to do training, or I have to do training every year. Why do I have to do this? And I think going back to being on a service desk role and kind of having that organizational context and being in the organization for a while, it makes people opening up about those things a lot easier. So, and this is kind of a bit of a funny story. When I first joined on the cyber team, most people knew me around the college as the service desk guy, as a guy who comes around, I fix your computer, I fix your classroom, I get whatever is broken to be fixed again. Not a lot of people knew that I transitioned to a cyber role. So when we started rolling out the cybersecurity program, started rolling out phishing awareness, started rolling out a training campaign, I would hear a lot of complaints from people about it on something that I was rolling out to them, but they had no idea that I was the one doing it. So I would get a lot of feedback that was like, oh, why do we have to do this training? Why is this training like important? I don't understand. I have all these emails I already have to answer. I have all this other stuff I have to do. I don't have time for training. I don't have time to do phishing simulations. And that's something that you hear a lot in a lot of organizations of any size, really, if you're rolling a program out like that. And something that I've always tried to do is make sure that people feel heard about their feedback. So I would tell people like, well, if you have problems with what we're doing, if you don't like the simulations, if you don't feel the training is really providing you with anything, we want to know about that. And something that I've always tried to maintain in my career is that if you listen to people, if you really truly make them feel heard about what you're trying to do and their feedback about it, you really can get a sense of ownership with those people, and they feel like they're a lot more involved in something. Not that something's being pushed onto them that they have to do, but it's something that they're a part of, and they're a part of growing, and they're a part of taking interest in something, and actually like helping the organization. They're not just someone subject to something; they're kind of a part of building this. Now, that doesn't mean that you're going to have your end users dictate what training material you have, or they get to pick when they get phishing simulations. That doesn't work. But making people feel like they can actually provide you with feedback and that it will be listened to, and that it will be actually incorporated in future iterations really goes a long way in building that culture, especially in somewhere where it's brand new. You don't want to, again, like Hawkeye was saying, you don't want to be the cyber police. No one wants to come around, and as much as I've wanted to get a cybersecurity badge, they won't let me get one. I do still very much want one, but they won't let me have it. But you don't want to be the cyber police. You don't want to come around and people dread seeing you in their office. You want to be someone that they see and they see as, again, sort of that service desk view. You're here to help them. You're here to make their experience better. You're here to protect them from threats, and ultimately keep things moving smoothly in the organization. Dom, Hawkeye, I'm sure you guys have plenty of thoughts to share on this as well.
I'll just add real quick here, Liam. In terms of the support from a leadership perspective. So when I'm coaching leaders and building out these cultures, the leadership notion here is something I refer to as leadership through connection, or to build that type of culture here, right? And that culture stems from the leader, right? And this is where I often see security cultures fall apart, is that a lot of people who are in leadership positions aren't cultivated to be leaders. They're maybe managers, but they're not leaders, right? So qualities are things that you should be working on in terms of, if you're trying to grow out a security program, you're here listening to this presentation today, some actionable takeaways in terms of building out this important culture and sustainable culture, as Liam mentioned. One is prioritize the one-on-one interactions with your team for real growth. Far too many leaders are in endless Zoom meetings, and I recognize the irony that we're here in Zoom or Teams meetings or what have you, and they don't have the opportunity to have that one-on-one time with their direct reports, with the people that they're trying to grow a security team with. And there's opportunities lost there in terms of real connection and real growth. That's where it's important, like I said, to either prioritize that time, or if you can't, work with someone like a leadership coach like me to be able to help grow that function and foster those types of interactions and connections with the team. That these are grassroots elements in terms of how you start building out a culture. The second piece is make sure that as a leader, you are following what I call the EES model. You empower, you encourage, and you support your team. I mean, there's still far too, especially in IT, a lot of us are recovering micromanagers, and that you see a lot of people who love to always have their hands on the technology, go up to a manager role, leadership role, and they still end up having their hands on that stuff. That's not what they should be doing in order to build out the culture, to build out the sustainability of the team. Right? As a leader, they need to focus on, like I said, empowering, encouraging, and supporting the team. And again, that type of stuff will manifest more easily through those prioritized one-on-one interactions, those real conversations that allow for that type of real authentic growth. And the last piece is giving opportunities for direct communication with management. So by that, I mean, give the people who report to you the opportunity to be seen and heard with people that you report to. Again, that goes back to the notion of being able to empower your team, to be able to encourage them to reach new heights. If you're always just keeping them in a pigeonhole and just doing a certain set of tasks, they're going to burn out. They're not going to feel joy. It's not going to be sustainable. They're not going to feel the motivation in terms of why does my work matter in the grand scheme of things. So be a selfless leader. Be someone who is giving opportunities to the people on your team for that type of, I'll say, sunshine type moment in front of management or the people that you as the leader report to. Again, these are small steps, elements that, again, go a long, long way in building a very strong, very effective, and very sustainable security culture.
Great, thank you, Dom. Hawkeye, what do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think you both covered it very well. I think that it's important to build a sustainable culture both inside the organization and inside your team. I don't really have much to add, but maybe I'll provide a few examples. A few weeks ago, I was teaching a cybersecurity class, and one of my students had brought up Eminem. I don't remember how, but they brought up Eminem. And so the next class we had, I put in one of my slides that Eminem was asking them for gift cards, and if they were going to sort of send them those gift cards. They said no, luckily, so we're covered there. But I think really the big takeaway there is listening. Listening to your user base, specializing, making it feel like they're involved, as Liam said. When you're just doing generic like cybersecurity training and sort of generic like don't click phishing links, people don't feel involved. To kind of be real, people feel like you're sort of talking down to them and almost like you're calling them sort of dumb a little bit, like don't click this very obvious link, when really that's not what's happening. It's all about safety. It's about safety of your users, of people, processes, and technology in the organization. That's ultimately the objective of cybersecurity in an institution and in an organization. And so as soon as you remove that barrier of sort of a shadowy cybersecurity figure that really only arrives when something's going wrong, you start getting more buy-in from your user base. And Dom, a point you touched on the team piece that I find is really important is that executive sort of interaction. And is that interaction at a level not above your management, but with your management at a level where those decisions are made. Going on the same cybersecurity piece, if you have like a shadowy executive figure that yes or knows the controls you're suggesting for risks, you don't feel very involved in building that security program. You don't feel like you actually have a say. You essentially feel like you're working towards a 50-50 chance that what you're saying is going to be considered. And that's not ideal at all. I will say, and I will also say that at CNC, we have had many opportunities to interact at that level, and it's made a difference. It absolutely has. So if you're looking at building a security team or looking at building a sustainable culture, it's incredibly important that you have those elements of approachability, of specialized training that is tuned, and to allowing your team to actually be part of the security function rather than just a team member making suggestions.
Absolutely. Thank you, Hawkeye. And yeah, like you need to be a part of the organization. You can't just provide generic training or generic messaging. You really need to tailor things to make sure that your organization feels like this is actually something for us. This isn't just training for anybody. This is actually something that someone has taken time to craft for us and is actually meaningful for us. Because if you do that, your staff will have a much better feeling that the training you're giving them is actually going to help them with their specific jobs or their specific industry and what they're doing. So I'll give another example of kind of both building the culture and doing stuff like making a phishing and awareness campaign, but also kind of doing something that is fun to keep people engaged with that. So one of the threats that we came across a little while ago that was something I've heard about, and then we started seeing more in live environments, was malicious QR codes. So a lot of email protections, and you can have a lot of tools in the world that will take out any malicious content. They're used to looking through links in messages you're sending to people. They're not often geared towards looking at images that you're sending, and mainly QR codes. So a lot of email protections will detonate a malicious payload from a URL in a sandbox, or it'll stop that from even getting to your user's mailbox altogether. One thing that I've noticed that some solutions do struggle with is QR codes. So something that we decided to do to kind of make a fun learning opportunity for our staff and for our students is teaching about the dangers of QR codes using jelly beans. So what we decided to do was we got a very common practice in a lot of workplaces and like other public places where you have a jar full of jelly beans and you try to guess how many jelly beans are in there. You write it on a piece of paper, you drop it in a slot, and then you might win a prize if you're close to the number of jelly beans. So what we did was we grabbed a CNC branded water bottle, filled it full of jelly beans, and then put a QR code on top of it. We did this to show people that it was kind of a sneaky way of teaching people that QR codes aren't always safe. Rather than sending out an email, which the reading percentage of PSA emails is not quite high. But if someone sees a jar full of jelly beans, they're much more likely to say, well, if I guess this and I could win some, CNC swag and a water bottle and a bunch of jelly beans, I'm going to do that. So we had them scan this QR code. They scanned the QR code, and that would bring them up to an informational page that would say, hey, not all QR codes are safe. And we pulled some information from the Canadian government's cyber department and pulling some information there about QR codes, as well as showing some examples of good QR codes and bad QR codes. And the good QR code being something that is very visible, something that is near a public window of service, something that you can ask people about. It's not hidden, it's not tucked away. It looks like it's supposed to be there. And we gave our staff and students some tips on how to find those. And we also gave them an example of something that is not safe to look at. So something that had I basically went down to one of our smaller basements, stuck a QR code on the side of a wall, slightly askew, and then took a picture really far away from like the bottom of this stairs, really giving the impression that this is not something you should click on. And we had a lot of success with that. We had a few people comment that like, oh, this was a kind of a fun way of learning about QR codes. I didn't really think about the fact that QR codes are really just a link that you're clicking on with your camera. And it's something that I'm going to start looking out for because we've had issues where we've found QR codes just stuck to random places and they might have whatever content could be stuck to them. But we had a lot of engagement. We had like over 100 people enter in the survey and follow up with it. So it was a good experience and something where if you tailor messages and you make things fun and exciting, people remember it more and they keep it in mind in their regular day to day. So I'll move on to the next slide here.
Liam, it's Renata.
Yeah.
There's a question in the chat, which is perhaps a good point to address it. So I'm sorry to interrupt you. But the question is, what do you do if the cybersecurity culture that you intend to build conflicts with the organization culture? Do you have some thoughts on that?
That's a really great question. So cybersecurity culture, it's not something that I think you can say, like you can never pull up one document and say, this is the cybersecurity culture to have. And especially when you're in an organization where something might conflict with that. You might need to have further security controls in place that might require more monitoring. And maybe that goes against some of your organization's culture that you have is everyone is a bit more private and stuff like that. When you run into those kind of issues, it's best to go to people that, especially your leadership, managers, but I would always approach when you reach those kind of conflicts with the organization is really present the risks associated with that culture that they have and understanding that not all culture in an organization is going to be healthy. And sometimes that does need to change. And the best way of communicating that, especially with your leadership, is going to be communicating risks what the impacts of this kind of culture are, what the risks of this culture could be to your organization, to your users, in our case, to our students, and really trying to communicate that to them, that this culture might have some issues and might lead to some inherent risks if we keep going about it this way. But you also have to understand, and it's a two-way street. You also have to take the feedback you get from the organization in terms of their culture and how they function and why these things are really important. But presenting them with evidence, presenting them with metrics, presenting them with risks is a really effective way of getting that culture to change. But it won't be something that changes overnight. Sometimes you might have to go back to the same person over and over again, to the same leadership circle. But really sticking to the facts, sticking to risks and how that might impact your organization, that's a really good way of changing that culture when you do run into those conflicts, because that will happen at some point or another. You'll try to push something out, and you will run up against resistance. And we'll talk about that actually in a couple slides here. Yeah, no, that's a great question. Thank you.
Yeah, no, and I mean, just to add a little bit on the end there, sometimes just documenting that risk after you've communicated it is really all you can do, right? And it's not to sound defeatist, but ultimately you don't want to tire yourself out, and you don't want to tire a security function out by continually pushing and pushing and pushing to handle a specific risk or integrate a specific piece of culture. Sometimes your institution is just not ready for it. Sometimes they're just not resourced for it. Sometimes that culture is so interwoven with that institution. Ultimately, in cybersecurity, you're a risk communicator. So you're communicating what the risk is, what the impacts of those risks are. And ultimately, that's really all you can do. Like I said, not to sound defeatist, of course, you get a lot of wins in cybersecurity. But when you're first building that culture into the institution, you're going to hit those walls. It's just going to happen. Unless you're an institution that's incredibly security aware, like a cybersecurity company or something, most institutions you'll find a few roadblocks, but ultimately communicate, document, and then if you find that there's a moment, if you have a read on the institution, to bring it up again, and represent those risks, right, and represent the impact of those risks, and that's where you get that buy-in. Absolutely. So. Okay, I think this next one is mine. Oh, sorry, Dom, were you gonna?
Sorry, Hawkeye, I just want to add something real quick. You and Liam, great points there. I just want to give a slightly different view too, in that you have to take a very people approach to something like culture. So what's important in this type of situation, if you see, like I said, there's a conflicting nature in the from a cultural perspective, identify who the what I refer cultural agents are, or who influences the culture at the organization. Right? Once you've identified who those people are, and or teams or groups are, work on developing meaningful relationships there. Right? If you're going to be an agent of change, you have to identify within the organization where those circle of influences live, form meaningful relationships there, and then work, like I said, at a from a personal level. And again, Liam and Hawkeye laid out excellent risk-oriented ways to present such information in a way to start changing the cultural shift there. But like Liam and Hawkeye said, it's not for the faint of heart. It's not going to happen overnight. But like I said, I think by taking that type of approach, that gives you the best shot. But like I said, that's something that's going to be measured in months or years, not weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, it's it can sometimes feel like an uphill battle, and I mean sometimes you have risks that are really critical for months, right? But ultimately, it's as Dom said, understanding your institution and understanding who those change managers basically are gets you a long way in building those relationships. Absolutely, which jumps really well into the next part of this, teamwork. So cybersecurity is not a one-man job. I will tell you that, or not a one-person job. Ultimately, you need a team, and you need a team that's well versed. You need a team that can collaborate well. Yeah, realistically, what you're looking for is building relationships in your institution, because teamwork's not only inside cybersecurity. Ultimately, you need to work well with your IT teams, You need to work well with critical business units. So let's say you're in the education sector, like we are. You might have like a registrar or like a student-facing business unit. You want to have good relationships with them. Ultimately, though, really what you're doing is you're identifying the teams you're working with, you're building those relationships, and you're building them to be collaborative, where you're a service, essentially, I want to say. Realistically, you need to feel like, or the business units you're building relationships need to feel like you're available. If they don't feel like you're available, or if they don't feel like there's teamwork there, if they feel like you're sort of stopping projects or just putting roadblocks in their way and calling out risks just for the fun of it, ultimately you're not gonna build those great relationships that you kind of need to succeed on a teamwork side. And then in IT, I mean, it's the same sort of deal. Let's say you're in an institution that hasn't had cybersecurity at all. So I'll use CNC as an example. Sometimes what you find is cybersecurity sort of falls outside of IT. And in some major institutions, it actually does, because there are some difference in objectives. But let's say you sometimes fall outside of IT. You need to really work to build those relationships and help security culture come from IT. Because if you have resistance internally in your IT team, those are the hardest roadblocks to get over, because ultimately those are the people that you're collaborating with the most in introducing new systems and training, in ensuring that those risks are documented and taken care of and controls are put in place. So realistically, what you want to do is you want to identify the most critical teams that you need to build a relationship with and start building those relationships that are collaborative and that further the institution and allow people to feel like you're a service, that you're needed, and that it's collaborative in nature. Liam, I'm not sure what your thoughts are.
Yeah, so the security team at the college, we both started on service desks. So the IT, like I think IT and cybersecurity, there is sometimes a confusion that they are the same thing. And there are a lot of organizations that do have those separate functions. You have a CISO for cybersecurity, you have a CIO for your information technology departments. But we work very closely together. An example of this would be vulnerability management. So we do a vulnerability management program at the college. We identify vulnerabilities, we verify that those exist, we try to assess what the impact of those vulnerabilities might be on our systems. But ultimately, the business and the IT department are the ones that need to action those vulnerabilities and remediate those risks. But there can sometimes be conflicts with that. With cybersecurity, we're always trying to make sure everything is as secure as possible. But with IT, a lot of times you're looking to keep everything as available as possible. And sometimes that doesn't always work well together. So an example of this would be you have a critical service, you have a critical application, and that application is needed for, let's say, an upcoming event, an upcoming initiative that your business is starting, and you've made commitments, you've made time commitments, commitments with people, with financial commitments. But you have a vulnerability that you found that could really hurt the organization. When you come into those kind of situations, and again, kind of going back to that earlier question around sort of conflicts with the organizational culture, it's really important that when that happens, you know who to talk to, you know what leadership that you talk to, and you know how to communicate those risks to them about what the risks are if we don't address this right away. You know, we've found this vulnerability. It's a very high CVE score. We suspect there could be a lot of damage done if this is ever used against us, and we need to address this right away. At that point, though, you need to be able to present the facts to the business, present the facts to your leadership, present the risks to them in a way that they can understand, which is also really crucial. Is you can't just give someone an output of a vulnerability scan and say, this is why it's important. You need to really communicate what the actual tangible risks are to moving forward with something like that, and being able to let them decide what they want to do with it. And you won't always be able to address those things right away, unfortunately. But if you're able to communicate those risks, you might be able to address those in an effective way and manage that overall risk of your organization. But you're going to be working with a lot of people, whether it's parts of IT, the rest of your organization. And like Hawkeye said, you really have to nurture those relationships and make it so that people feel comfortable coming to you, reaching out to you, and bringing any issues they have to you to address, and working together with people, and again, making people feel like they're heard about these kind of things. Dom, I'm sure you have some thoughts on this as well.
Yeah, what I want to add is just a different angle here in terms of, you guys have been talking great stuff here around teamwork, in terms of what type of hires should a leader be looking in terms of the quality of people who would do well in a team-oriented environment, right? So long gone should be the days of hiring, the lone wolf, the tech whiz who could do everything but had zero people skills. That doesn't work anymore, right? We need people who can thrive in team settings, right? So types of qualities that I'm generally encouraging my clients to look for as they're growing out their team, people who have some level of intrinsic motivation, right? They need to have a level of humility, right? We don't need arrogant people, right? That's one of the reasons why people don't like cybersecurity people, why that stereotype exists. They're a bunch of stuck-up jackasses, is because, in the past, we haven't been terribly humble, right? So we need people who are able to express some level of humility. And we need people who are extremely coachable. They're willing to learn, they're willing to unlearn, and learn again. In a dynamic field like cybersecurity, where things are changing all the time, we need these people to be coachable, not just on the technical stuff, but on the people stuff as well, right? Harnessing their communication skills, their presentation skills, their interrelationship skills. That's so important, right? So again, inner fire, humility, and coachability. And the last thing too, in terms of setting up a thriving teamwork, or have the teamwork make the dream work kind of deal here, is to, as a leader, actively encourage dissent, actively encourage your team to challenge status quo, to challenge your vision in terms of what you're laying out here. Encourage that dissent and encourage that level of challenge. If that bothers you as a leader, well, good. That means then you have an opportunity to grow as a leader. If you don't want to do that, then go join the Trump administration. I know they love being surrounded by yes people there, but if you want to grow a meaningful and sustainable security culture at an organization, a thriving team, encourage dissent and encourage your team to challenge you. That's where innovation happens.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dom.
Absolutely, Dom. Yeah. And maybe I'll add a little piece on the end there, just around the sort of ability to be coachable and the ability to change, which I think is really important, and especially around the yes men pieces. When you get into cybersecurity, it's going to feel black and white. I know for me, when I started at CNC in a security role, there were so many risks and so many things I was finding that I would bring to leadership, or I would bring to a specific business unit. And you'd hear, no, this is fine. We need this system available. That black and white sort of vision that you have of security, it's often not 100%. I want to say that just very clearly. You really need to be able to change that vision and adjust your institution. And it's really important to be able to communicate those risks, as I've said, communicate. And the other pieces around yes men. In security, you're probably going to find a few of those, and you're probably going to end up fighting with them. When a project or when an initiative has a lot of drive in an institution, a lot of money's behind it, a lot of people are behind it, you've put X amount of time into it, and security finds a major risk and needs to slow that project down or needs to evaluate something, expect pushback. I will say, and I think this is going to be covered in our next sort of set of slides here, but you can really expect to hit some walls. And when you hit those walls, take a step back, think from that perspective, am I viewing this in black and white? And sometimes you're not, right? And sometimes it's just a risk you need to document. But really taking that time to sort of view your own perspective and the perspective of others can really make it easier to swallow those risks, even if you shouldn't really need to. Kind of the piece I'll add there. And in terms of the last slides, I'll stop rambling now, probably over to Liam for the last set here.
Thank you, Hawkeye. And yes, you're exactly right. Then our next set of slides will go over very much roadblocks and when those happen. So I've been in the cybersecurity function for a couple of years now, and it, believe it or not, is not always a smooth journey. You will encounter roadblocks at some point, and you might expect some of them, but a lot of them you won't. And that's when you really start to learn more about your organization and about sort of common practices and common understandings. So I'll give you a few examples, or I'll give you one big example when this hasn't gone right for us. And this one I think is quite interesting because it's with an internal IT team. So when you're so one of the things we tried to roll out recently, or not so recently, it was a little while ago, was privilege access management. If you don't know what privilege access management is, it's essentially putting the concept of least privilege on IT and sysadmin and privileged accounts in general. So the idea is that you secure your privileged accounts so that they can't be taken over, and that they have, if they are ever compromised, they have just as much permissions as they need to, and avoid any of the more dangerous permissions that could harm your organization. So when we tried to do privilege access management, we ran into a few issues. The overall concept we could all agree on, from the security team to the IT teams, that was something that we needed to engage with. One of the issues that we came across was in communication of what this change will actually do. So again, um, when you're making big changes in an organization, you really need to kind of keep your finger on the pulse of everything that's happening and how people are going to be impacted by those changes. And when we were rolling out this solution, it was all great. We had really great feedback. We spoke with people, and they thought that this was a great idea. This will help, won't impact their jobs at all. And what we noticed is when we started rolling it out, and we started actually making those changes, is that we ran into issues where some people didn't expect this solution to impact their work in the way that it did. And it was hard. It was a really hard project to get through. But it taught us a lot of really valuable lessons, in that when you're trying to roll something out, especially when it's going to affect your organization's ability to administer its own services, is you really need to take care to make sure that you're not just providing an opportunity for feedback, but you're really going out to people and asking for that feedback, or you're asking them to try things and test things and really get a sense of what their experience will be. One of I think the mistakes that we made was we provided a place for people to provide feedback, but we didn't go to people to really ask them to try something and get their feedback on it. And I think that led to some difficulties, and it was a lot of a learning and growing process to figure out how to get the solution in a place where we were comfortable with it. Once we did, though, we saw a lot of really great improvements. A lot less open access, a lot less over provisioned access. A lot of people had the right permissions that they needed for their roles. And it helped us with a lot of different areas, with onboarding, with offboarding. It made a lot of those things a lot more simple and a lot more proceduralized. But it was quite an ordeal to get there. So when you're up against something like that, when you're trying to make these really big changes, especially if it's going to impact a large number of people, or a lot of people in your organization that aren't used to having their own access being subject to changes, is you really have to make sure that you get feedback from people and you really listen to them about what they're trying to do, and really understand that what you're doing is going to change how people work, and that every change you make is going to impact someone. So really try to gather as much feedback and as much input from the people you're going to be applying that change to. And if you do that, you'll have a much higher chance of having a really great success and really making significant security changes for your organization that'll really help in your overall security. So Hawkeye, Dom, I'm sure you guys have some thoughts on there as well.
Yeah, absolutely. You hit roadblocks. Let's be real. I mean, they happen all the time in cybersecurity. I'm sure they happen in other fields too. Cybersecurity definitely more so in some institutions. And I mean, yeah, I agree completely. I think change communication is a really big one. And building those relationships to communicate those sort of risks. I'm seeing we only have 5 minutes left, so I'm gonna like really quickly just speed run through this. But yes, you want to communicate change. You don't want to stay up at night thinking of all the changes that you can't make. Like I said, your risk communicator, communicate those risks, view the reaction, document and implement what you can. And ultimately, roadblocks are the things that are going to keep you up at night and are going to really frustrate you. ultimately, and this might not be the right answer, but chill a little. It's important to secure the institution, but it's also important to make sure that you yourself are being taken care of. And ultimately that comes down to just documenting and implementing what you can. So Dom, I'm sure you have some thoughts.
Just very, very quickly, again, from the lens for, again, the person who is the leader of the team, be a leader who is capable of removing roadblocks for the people that you've brought onto your team, right? Don't leave it up to your junior analyst to remove roadblocks. Be someone who's, again, someone who's capable of removing roadblocks, empowering your team, energizing your team, especially for a young team. Burnout is real in this field, right? And if your team, especially a young team, is encountering a lot of resistance and roadblocks on a daily basis, day after day, week after week, month after month, they're more prone to burnout. So it's really important that you as a leader are very in tune with how your team is doing mentally, because being in this field can provide big mental hit to your mental health and mental well-being. So make sure you're checking in with your team and removing those types of resistant spots or roadblocks, and then, like I said, empowering and energizing your team to be able to not just survive but thrive.
Great, thank you, Dom. Yeah, no, it can be a stressful kind of career, so taking care of yourself is really important. Lastly, I just wanted to end off here on a quote from Superman himself. A hero is an ordinary individual who finds the strength to persevere and endure in spite of overwhelming obstacles. That's by Christopher Reeve. And yeah, there can definitely be times where it feels like everything can be very overwhelming in cybersecurity. You can feel like you have a lot of responsibility. If you're in cybersecurity and you're attending this panel, my heart goes out to you. I wish you all the greatest success. But it can be really challenging. And being aware that you're going to run into obstacles. It's not always going to go well, but what you're doing is really important, and it's really helping your organization. It's helping the people you work with. It's helping the people that you serve, and it's really providing a really great service for everyone around you as much as you can. So with that being said, thank you everyone for attending our panel. And apologize, we kind of used up most of the time here, but we have a few minutes left for questions.
Sorry, super quickly, and I see a question that Max put in the Q&A. Do you mind if I answer it really quickly?
Yeah, no, go right ahead.
I think it's a great question. So it's sort of around how do you actually get into cybersecurity? So questions around are academic institutions not able to quickly adapt? Do employers have unrealistic expectations? Are organizations not clear on what they need? Yes, right? I think when you see job postings for cybersecurity, it's like, you need a CISSP, you need this, you need this. It discourages people, to be honest. Ultimately, as Dom sort of touched on, you have motivation, you have talent, you love the field, and you have that coachability. There is a bit of an experience piece there. So me, myself, I did a year, a college certificate in just general IT, worked for the college for about a year, did a few certifications, my Security Plus and an Azure one, and then I was in. I think institutions have a view that I don't agree with, at least currently, around cybersecurity, that you need to know everything, right? You need to be like this great person that can find all these risks and implement all these solutions, and about like networking and development, all this stuff. It's not realistic, right? And I think it really discourages people, and it's something that, as Dom sort of said, in talent pipelines, look for people that have promise, look for people that can rise to that occasion. I met Dom when I was very early on starting in cybersecurity. I mean, luckily, I think he did see that sort of motivation that I had and that want to succeed. That's ultimately what brought me to where I am. Would I have succeeded in a cybersecurity role when I first started at the college? No, I wouldn't have, to be real. And ultimately, you want to work with those coaches and those leaders, and you want to build that experience to a point where you can get an entry-level role or you can move into the field. And if you're an employer, lower those expectations. Realistically, you need to lower your expectations, and you need to find people that can come into the field and rise to the occasion. They're not there already, right? So that's really the piece I wanted to touch on. Education is another one. Education is always going to have a hard time adapting. I'd say you don't need a 4-year like CS degree to kind of get into cybersecurity. Like I said, I've only done a year. And I mean, education is always going to have a hard time adapting because cybersecurity changes every day. Constantly new risks, constantly new considerations, and education, the way it changes, I think in Canada at least, because there's so many layers of sort of approvals and changes and sort of the political pieces, it becomes really, really hard to get that 100% value. Not to say education isn't valuable, it's incredibly valuable. But don't expect a program like that to be the only thing accelerating you into a career, is the sort of piece I would want to touch on there.
Hawkeye, I was going to jump in on that question, but you just said everything I was going to say. The only thing I want to still comment on is, and you alluded to this earlier, is people also have to self-identify as being part of cybersecurity and wanting to be a part of it. My background is accounting. So, you know, there's a nice parallel there with the orderliness and the following frameworks and so on. But people shouldn't be scared off by thinking that you have to have a 4-year degree. I think people need to explore exactly what you said. There's certifications you can level up to, you know, while you're in your career, because cyber is not something you learn in a 4-year degree. You learn a lot about computer science in a 4-year degree, but you're not necessarily going to be a cyber expert at the end of that. And it changes so quickly, to your point. You have to keep upskilling constantly. So you hit the nail on the head. We have a
Awesome.
couple
I'm
other
glad
questions.
glad it was sufficient.
Yeah, no, it was great. And actually, one other comment I'd like to make about leadership. Leadership is in itself a skill. People often, I think, Dominic, you said they're a manager, but you're not necessarily a leader. It's a completely different skill set, and the human side of it is very much a cybersecurity skill. You guys made that point very clearly in your presentation, and I think that's something that we all need to take in when we're hiring people. You're not just hiring for those hard skills, you're hiring for human skills as well. Max has a couple of amazing questions in the Q&A. I know, Hawkeye, it looks like you're going to answer his question about don'ts. There's another question in here, Dominic, maybe that you could weigh in on, and that's around what if cybersecurity is a different dependency in the org chart? So how is cyber different if that is like a CISO reporting directly up, or reporting into a CIO, or even, and this happens a lot, reporting through the CFO in many organizations? Do you see, like, can it work in all three of those, or is one better than the other?
Well, it's a very good question. I know Liam was touching on it earlier in the presentation as well. I mean, different organizations do have different structures. Is one better than the other? You know, different strokes for different folks. But you know, it does come down to what I really believe, that cybersecurity has evolved to the point where it's ideally shouldn't just be within IT. It's just too much natural conflict there that's occurring. Ideally, it should be part of a risk function. It should be part of an operational function. It should be separated from IT. The problem with that, though, is that because over the past 20-ish years, as that function has evolved within IT, it's now very embedded in IT. And now it becomes very territorial. I've been in organizations, both as an employee and as a consultant or a coach or contractor, where there's a faction that wants to move the security team out, but it's very territorial. The CIO does not want to give up that budget or what have you, right? So I wish I could give a very clear answer, but I mean, to me, it does depend on the organization. But like I said, even in organizations where it's identified that, hey, we should be moved elsewhere, doing that is easier said than done, right? So I think the most practical answer, though, is to have relationships outside of IT. So if you are a CISO and you are a peer to the CIO, that is different than if you're a CISO who reports to a CIO. But regardless, as if you're a CISO, IT security director, cybersecurity manager, have relationships outside of IT.
Great point. And before I thank you guys and let you go, I want to tell you a quick story about culture in my own organization. So my boss, who is the CEO, loves to leave his computer unlocked and walk away from it, which is very low risk, admittedly, in our office because our doors are locked. We don't have any strangers wandering around, and it's not very big. But every time he does this, I go on his computer onto Teams and I post in the general Teams chat, Renata is my favorite employee. She is the best person we have ever had in this organization, and we would be lost without her. And then I send it to everyone and I lock his computer and walk away. And he will not change. He teases me all the time about me being a security risk on his computer, but my entire team laughs about it and they're all hyper aware about locking their computer as a result. So sometimes you have to tap into that, like almost gamification of cyber to get people on board. And when people are laughing about it and understanding the reason for it, I think you get a lot more buy-in. So with that, I want to thank you guys. Leadership is a skill and you guys are demonstrating it in spades. I am so impressed by what you have done. I will confess, I'm going to be calling you later and picking your brain a little bit for my own programs. And thank you so much for your contribution. The College of New Caledonia is lucky to have you guys. And Dominic, you were right when you said I would really like to have these guys speak today. And with that, thank
I
you
promised and I
guys.
delivered.
I know you did. You did. So we're going to take just a 5-minute break to give everyone a chance to refresh their coffees, run to the washrooms, and then we're going to come back with a really great panel. So please take a quick break, get up, stretch your legs, and we'll see you back here at 10:10. Thanks, everybody.
Awesome. Thank you, Renata. Bye-bye.
Thank
Bye,
Thank you,
you.
Renata.
guys.
Thank you, everyone.
Hey, Anthony, can you hear me?
Yep, you're good.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Feel free to also share your screen if you want to test that out if you have slides.
Sure.
Oh,
Look, it's just flipping through, that's all.
there we go.
Okay.
I see the Slido.
Excellent. Okay,
Perfect.
great.
Awesome.
Thank you very much.
No problem. Looking forward to it.
Good morning, Randy.
Good morning. How you doing?
I'm good. Glad to
Well,
see you.
yeah, sounds like it's going well.
Yes, this
Yeah.
is a great session, and we have so many great presenters and attendees. And I love that we're recording it, so everyone who's here today will get to see everything again later. And look
Yeah,
at
that's
that,
excellent.
it's 10:10. I'm right on time. All right. Well, let's get started with our second session. Welcome back from our brief break. For this session, oh, and Randy, it looks like you're still presenting. Maybe it's just me. Not sure if that's still what's happening. Okay, well, we'll kick Randy out in a second. So,
Yeah,
oh,
I shouldn't be. I
no,
stopped sharing.
it's probably just me.
Oh.
I'll drink more coffee and we'll be fine. So for this session, we're really fortunate to have representatives from 3 Canadian organizations who provide cyber support and resources to all Canadians, including local governments. So join me in welcoming these 3. I'm going to read this so I don't get it wrong. So we have Jennifer Chant. She is the Supervisor of Cybersecurity Advice and Guidance at the Canadian Centre for Cybersecurity. We have John Ferguson, who is the Vice President of Cybersecurity and DNS at the Canadian Internet Registration Authority, or CIRA. And we have Sergeant Warren Krahenbil. I hope I pronounced that right, Warren.
Perfect.
Perfect, excellent, okay. And he is the team lead for the RCMP Federal Policing Cybercrime Investigative Team in Vancouver and of the Cryptocurrency Tactical Operations Support Team. So we're fortunate to have each of these 3 with us today. Each of them is going to take some time to talk through what they offer through their organizations and how perhaps they can help local governments. So we're going to start with Jennifer, and Jennifer was stuck in an ice storm. So she may or may not be able to use video, and she's stuck with me running her slide deck for her. So, you know, let's give Jennifer a hand for even showing up this morning. Thank you so much. I
Not a
really
problem.
appreciate it. And I'm gonna let you kick things off. Just if you want to introduce yourself first, and then when you're ready, let me know and I'll share your slides. Thanks,
Absolutely, thank
Jennifer.
you. Yeah, so like Renata said, I'm in Ontario and we had quite the storm this past weekend. So lots of power outages, internet outages, and I'm currently working off-site where I normally would not be working. So my setup is a bit funky. The connection's not fantastic, so probably to save some bandwidth, I will shut down while I'm presenting, but I'm happy to come back so you can get a face to the name when we do the Q&A. As Renata said, I am the supervisor for our cybersecurity guidance area. My team produces the publications that are posted on our website. They're meant for a wide variety of audiences, which I'll get into a little bit later in the presentation. Excuse me, I'm also getting over pneumonia, so I apologize. I'm just a hot mess
Jennifer,
today.
thank you for being here.
No, of course, yeah. So if you want to run the slides, Renata, that would be great. Thank you. Okay, we can head to the next one, please. In the interest of time today, I'm not going to go into detail about all of our programs and services that we do offer, but I'd like to make sure that I hit on some of the more fruitful ones for this audience. But at the end of the slide, at the end of the deck, sorry, I do have a slide that provides our contact for our partnerships team, who are our biggest promoters out there. So if you are interested in any of the services, that information will be provided on the deck, and you're more than welcome to reach out to our partnerships team. I also wanted to mention that we do have an employee from the partnerships team who actually lives in Vancouver. So his name is Earl, and he would be more than happy to reach out and meet with organizations as well in the area. Very briefly, I wanted to tell you a little bit about the Cyber Center for those who might not be familiar with our organization. We fall under the umbrella of the Communications Security Establishment, or CSE. This is Canada's national cryptologic agency, and we basically work together as partners or a subunit of CSE. The Cyber Center looks to safeguard Canada with cybersecurity capabilities. We're providing advice and guidance for a large audience across Canada. And we're also looking to enhance the posture of cybersecurity within organizations in Canada through different projects and partnerships and innovation. Next slide, please. I don't want to go into massive detail about the Cyber Center, but it is helpful to understand what we can provide and what we sort of are mandated to do from a Government of Canada perspective, and also what we do not do, because there tends to be some confusion about what we can provide and what we cannot provide. So I always like to make it a little bit clear right off the hop. So the Cyber Center is a source of expert advice and guidance. We provide services and support on cybersecurity for government, for critical infrastructure owners and operators, for the private sector, and the Canadian public. We defend GC networks and systems. We advise and assist other levels of government and operators within Canada's critical infrastructure on essentials for cybersecurity, incident management and response, and just enhancing overall posture. We also offer simple and effective tips for all Canadians through our Get Cyber Safe program. They have a separate site that is available as getcybersafe.gc.ca, I believe. And there you'll find any number of useful publications, videos, games, checklists, you name it, they come up with it. But that's really meant for a full Canadian audience. There's some tidbits that would be helpful definitely for government sectors as well. We work closely with federal government departments, with provinces, territories, municipalities. We work with RCI sectors, Canadian businesses, academia, and our international partners. Now that you have a sense of what we do and who we are, I just wanted to, again, like I said, talk about what we are not or what we do not provide. It's important because, like I said, there's usually some confusion over what the Cyber Center does versus other organizations within the GC. So we are not regulators. Anyone who works with us does so because they want to and because there's a mutual benefit between the two organizations. We have no authority to compel any organization to report anything to us or to follow any of our advice or guidance. We're also not law enforcement. That's the wonderful job of our RCMP counterparts and local police jurisdictions. But we can certainly help facilitate the connections to the various law enforcement agencies that might be available to help you if you're facing a cyber incident, for example. And finally, we are not a newsroom. We do not share the names of organizations that work with us or any incidents that are reported to us. Everything is confidential and remains that way because we want to make sure that we have a trust relationship established with our partners and they feel safe coming to us for our support during incidents. So confidentiality is very important. Excuse me. Next slide, please. So this is the 5-part mandate that CSE as an organization adheres to, and we have one piece of that pie where we have cybersecurity and information assurance. So basically the Cyber Center's mandate is to provide cybersecurity and information assurance to systems of importance to the Government of Canada or to Canadians at large. We use our technical expertise to safeguard the information systems that Canadians rely on every day, and this is where our relationship with critical infrastructure really comes into play. Next slide, please. This is just a quick visual of all the sectors that we work with. We specifically focus on our work with these sectors as our partners. We're authorized to provide services to these critical non-government networks. And in order to support the work that we do within all of these sectors, we have dedicated teams that are leading the various sector work so that cybersecurity best practices are being promoted and tailored to the sections and what they might actually need within their given sector. Overall, we're looking to improve sector cybersecurity posture. We're looking to provide any kind of advice and guidance that we can to assist them in securing their systems and their networks. And we really want to predominantly help organizations prevent cyber attacks, as well as respond and recover from them if they do happen. All of these services that I've mentioned thus far and will continue to mention are free. And we do this mostly through our partnerships program. Next slide, please. Very briefly, I wanted to highlight the National Cyber Threat Assessment, or the NCTA. We release this every couple of years, and it's available on our website. The NCTA highlights cyber threats facing individuals and organizations within Canada. We prepare these assessments to help Canadians shape and sustain their cyber resilience. And it's also just a really good kind of launching point if you are new to cyber or you're trying to brief things up to executives and you really want them to understand sort of the reasoning behind some of the things you're proposing. I find that the NCTA is a very good overall assessment of what the threat posture will look like for the next given number of years. Next slide, please. Again, I won't go into the detail on this slide, but this table is representative of the key judgments that were in the cyber NCTA that we released for 25 and 26. Basically, it's a snapshot of the overall key judgments that were found by our threat assessment group. And the information in the NCTA is based both off of classified and unclassified intelligence information that we work to scrub down and be able to release publicly. Next slide, please. So we do have different services that really serve a number of different purposes, including increased awareness tools. We have tools to strengthen your cyber defense, support for handling incidents, as well as community building. As I mentioned, all of these services are free. And I'm going to briefly go over some of the main ones for you that I thought might be of interest to this group. Next slide, please. So the Cyber Center offers a variety of free alerting services and tools to our partners. So everything that you see on this slide. In order to receive these services, we do need your organization to onboard through our partnerships team. For anyone that's interested here today, there is contact information, as I said, at the end of the slide, at the end of the deck, sorry, that you can reach out to, and we'll be sure to get you started with the onboarding process. Once you have been onboarded, you'll receive instructions to set up your My Cyber Portal account. And from there, we're able to identify a primary contact for your organization and send invitations to create the account on My Cyber Portal. And you can then start managing the subscriptions that you'd like to sign up for and the types of information that would be of most use for your organization. So briefly, I'll go through some of the services. We offer cyber alerts, which are emails that are sent out on an ad hoc basis. They include an overview of the current vulnerabilities and compromises that have been discovered in usually products and services that are widely used across the country. Our cyber flashes are emails that are sent when there's an immediate or active security issue, if there's a compromise, or if there's a campaign that has a considerable impact on either Canadians or Canadian critical infrastructure. Our National Cyber Threat Notification System, or the NCTNS, is an automated notification system that informs you when a sign of a compromise or a vulnerable service is seen within your own public-facing network assets. So this can include stuff like your IP, your ASN, and your domains. Excuse me. In order to subscribe to the NCTNS, you will need to provide your public-facing network assets that you would like to be notified about to the Cyber Center. And these assets also have to be located within Canada and owned or administered by you or your organization. We provide a scorecard service, which is a monthly PDF report that provides information about potential malware infections or vulnerable services or vulnerabilities on public spaces used by your organization. They're really great because they offer sort of like a peer-based comparison to other organizations within your sector and subsectors sometimes, so that you can understand where you fit in within those sectors with respect to the rest of your industry. We provide a weekly technical report, which is a summary of activities and incidents, and it's released by the Cyber Center, most recently released Cyber Center products, so the publications. The WTRs contain information related to incidents that typically affect CI and government. So one thing that's not on this slide, but I did want to make sure that I mentioned it, was something that we've been doing over the last year. We've been leveraging special intelligence to alert Canadian organizations when there's a threat actor who's positioning to target them with ransomware. We've alerted over 250 organizations in the last year across different sectors like energy, health, manufacturing, and they were able to take steps to prevent being a victim of ransomware. So this isn't a subscription-based service, but it is something that you can indicate that you're interested in to your partnership lead. They're pre-ransomware notifications, and it's just an extra thing that we started doing that has been quite helpful for a lot of people. So we do have a malware analysis tool, and we also have a service called Beaver, which is our unclassified knowledge base for millions of cyber threat analysis and reports that the Cyber Center has gathered. The reports include indicators of compromise. They have malware, hashes, packet captures, web addresses, domains, and IP addresses. Beaver will provide partners with access to cyber threat information that they can use for further analysis. And the information is also really helpful for building and supporting a cyber defense strategy, for example, or conducting an incident response or building your own incident response plan. So that's another good service. Aventail is our automatic IOC, or indicator of compromise sharing platform. And this allows you to receive timely and verified IOCs. And it can help you automate your network defense. So that's another tool or service that we try to make sure partners sign up for. Howler is also a tool that we provide. It's an open source triage platform. And it basically enables triage analysts to take their workflows and streamline them and enhance the capabilities to better handle the alerts that we're sending through. And lastly, we have the Canadian Cybersecurity tool. So it's a free self-assessment through public safety, and it was done in collaboration with CSE and the Cyber Center. This tool is really meant for Canadian CI, which includes government, to assess the type and the scale of cyber events that can be or have been experienced by your organization, and you can evaluate your technical resiliency, but also the resiliency of your program or your organization based on these self-assessments. So for all of these services, they're free. They're available to government. They're supported by our partnerships branch and our incident response teams. I just wanted to mention that we routinely do draft NDAs with our partners, or non-disclosure agreements, so that we are better positioned to assist in cyber incidents specifically. So these are sort of drawn up when there's no crisis happening. They're discussed between partners, and really they're there to make sure that your information stays confidential and that you have extra assurance of that. Next slide, please. Very briefly, we have sharing protocols for all of our subscription services. They're traffic light protocols. I don't know if some are familiar with this or not, but essentially any communication that you would receive from us would include a traffic light protocol, or a TLP. And basically this is an indicator of whether you can share the information and how you can share the information that we're sending to you. So just keep in mind that if you do receive information from us through any of these subscription services, just to make note of the traffic light protocol and follow the distribution accordingly. Next slide, please. We do host a cyber threat briefing. It's offered every 2 weeks on a Thursday, with 2 different times during the day to accommodate our partners across the country who are in different time zones. The threat briefing was created to help keep our partners informed about cybersecurity events, and to create sort of a regular touch point where we can get together and share knowledge, ask questions, seek advice and guidance. So it's really valuable, not only from from our perspective of sharing the information, but it's also really valuable to us to hear from our partners and sort of what challenges they're facing. A lot of the time we end up developing guidance, for example, based on the cyber threat briefings, because our partners will come to us with real world challenges and problems, and we try to work through it. And from that, we generally end up issuing some guidance for a larger audience, which is a nice partnership. I won't go too much more into the cyber briefings, but essentially we have them led by technical experts within the Cyber Center. So they're there to give you a briefing, but then also answer questions and provide some advice and guidance, or take away your questions and provide you with more in-depth discussion if a follow-up call or something is needed. Next slide, please. So we offer a service called Walk the Talk. So these are sessions that our subject matter experts put together. They're offered online, and we host them a few times every quarter. Each session focuses on a particular topic of interest, and ones that we've done in the most recent past, I would say we did one on ransomware, we did one on supply chain risk assessment, there was one on zero trust architecture, and I believe we did one on considerations when using an MSP as well. So when we add you to our mailing list, we'll make sure that you receive the invitations for these sessions. And we're always happy to take requests from partners as well. If there's topics that you'd like to see covered in a Walk the Talk session, then we just ask that you reach out to your sector lead and provide that request, and we will do our best to accommodate that. Next slide, please. We recently produced something called the Cyber Readiness Goals, or the CRGs. Basically, these are voluntary performance measurement goals for improving your cybersecurity. So there's 36 goals altogether in the CRGs, and they were based on the 6 pillars of the National Institute of Standards and Technology, or NIST, their cybersecurity framework. Each goal is linked to a concrete recommendation that we feel, if taken, would elevate your overall cybersecurity posture. The CRGs also have a cross-sector goals toolkit that's available for practitioners who can implement the guidance into their systems. And the CRGs can be applied across all CI sectors in Canada, but they're not just for CI sectors. I think really any organization could pick these up and walk away with a more secure environment by following some of the advice and guidance within them. Next slide, please. So the Cyber Center's cybersecurity guidance team, which is my team, we provide publications, advice and guidance, and we also have a sister team that provides threat assessment reports. Our audience is really wide-ranging. We try to target the Government of Canada. We like to provide guidance for the Canadian CI sectors, large enterprise, small and medium organizations, and then just Canadians writ large. We have different series of publications. There's an awareness level one, which is like a high level, more generic type of guidance product that we would offer. It's usually about 2 to 3 pages long. We have management level publications, which we try to take a bit of a deeper dive into so that technical managers and non-technical managers have the information they need to, attend meetings with IT or vendors and be knowledgeable in a subject. Then we have our practitioner level publications, which are really meant for IT practitioners to take actionable guidance and mitigation. On average, we publish about 50 publications a year. And we really do try to cover a wide range of topics, but we're always happy to accept requests from our partners as well. So if there's anything that you don't see on our site that you're interested about, or maybe it's a challenge that your organization is facing, again, you can always submit those requests either through those cyber threat briefings or directly to the sector leads, and they'll make sure that they get to our team. Next slide, please, sorry. And very briefly, this is just a snapshot to show some of the publications and the subject matter that we've covered over the last few months, or last year, I guess. I won't name them all. And I think this is one of the last slides, but we do have a learning hub at the Cyber Center. So they're a trusted source for academic information and training modules and services. While this service does have a cost associated with it, the courses and the knowledge are very helpful and will definitely benefit the users. You can access the Learning Hub through our website. There's a lot of courses actually on there that are free that you can take, but there's also paid for services that you can inquire about with the Learning Hub if you need to take a deeper dive into a subject or there's a course that's more tailored for your organization. Next slide, please. We have an annual event called Geek Week. This is an event that is by invitation only, and we do ask that partners apply to attend just so that we can get a better sense of sort of the sectors that we'll be tailoring it for. We do encourage everyone to put in an application, and we do our best to make sure that we're pulling a wide range of participants. But Geek Week is a workshop where you can work collaboratively, with other private sector partners and government partners. And it's a way for us to sort of brainstorm and look into different problems that we face as cybersecurity practitioners, and look at ways that we could potentially develop new tools or guidance or supports to better align and enhance the cybersecurity posture. So if your application is accepted, then the event itself is free. And we do our best to make sure that there is some virtual component to it, but we generally have lots of time to let everybody know so you can arrange travel and plan ahead and whatnot. Next slide, please. This is more for maybe larger partners, but we also do have subject matter experts or executives who attend speaking engagements and events. So they can include things like panel appearances like I'm doing today, or it can be cybersecurity awareness briefings. You can get in touch with us anytime if you'd like a representative from the Cyber Center to come and speak. And again, we can do that virtually or in person. We just need a few weeks notice to prep for that. And next slide, please. I did mention earlier that we do have some support for incident handling and response. So any Canadian critical infrastructure partner can ask us for help during a cyber incident. And this can look different for everyone. It really is dependent on your organization and the incident that you're facing. But we can provide guidance and threat intelligence. We can perform digital forensics, or we can even facilitate malicious content takedowns for you. We have a team of incident handlers who are available to walk you through next steps. And it depends on the level of support that you're looking for. Two things for you to know if you're thinking of reporting an incident. The first is that we offer a 24/7 monitoring when you report on our website, which means you can report your incident at any time throughout the day or night, and you will get a response. The second is that we offer you full confidentiality, and I alluded to this earlier, but the information that you share with us will absolutely not be shared with anyone outside the Cyber Center unless you give explicit permission for us to do so. So that's just a quick note on our incident handling. If you go to the next slide, please, Renata. We do have an online reporting tool, as I mentioned. So this is monitored 24/7. The more we know about what's going on in terms of the incident, the better we are prepared to support you and help you guide you through it. So again, as much as you're willing and able to share through the reporting tool, it's broken up into different categories. So if you're an IT practitioner putting in the reporting, if you're a CI sector or an organization, or if you're a government department or agency. So depending on the option that you choose there, you might get different questionnaires to complete. But just so you know that is another tool that's available out there for free and a service that we offer back for free. The last slide here, again, is just that contact information that I spoke to earlier. Our partnerships inbox is the main sort of inbox. And from there, once we know your sector and the services that you're interested in, you'll have a sector lead who will be your main point of contact moving forward. We always like to highlight other areas within the Government of Canada, who we work with and who also have a part to play in this. So the Canadian Anti-Fraud Centre, the RCMP, so there's federal policing, and then we also have the, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but it's the National Cybercrime Unit, I believe. And then we also have a spam reporting area that we can put in as well. So between those contacts and our online reporting tool, we definitely have you covered for incident management and handling. And that's the end of my slides. I'm happy to take questions now, or I can wait until at the end, whatever works best for you.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. I know I'm attending a program with one of your coworkers, and after talking to her the first time, I went exploring on your site, and I was stunned actually by the amount of material that's available and that is largely free. So really appreciate you doing the high level overview and giving everyone, like there's stuff in here I didn't even know about, and I've been poking your site a lot.
Oh, that's great.
We do have one question that's in the question and answer section, but I think in the interest of time, let's move to John and then see if we have any other questions, and if any of you are best suited to answer that one, we'll go with that at the time.
Great.
Okay. Thanks, Jennifer. If you're able to hang on in your ice encrusted home, then we'll see if we have questions for you at the end.
Perfect.
And
Thank you.
so thanks, Jennifer. And without further ado, John, let's hear from you. Thank you.
Thanks, Renata. I think everything should be shared out fine, so maybe I can get a thumbs up. You let me know that we're good.
Yes, good.
Excellent. Perhaps I'll start off a little bit here just to share with who CIRA is. Not everybody knows who we are, and quite often folks really know us as the .ca people. So CIRA is actually a national not-for-profit headquartered in Ottawa, established in 1998, founded with the purpose of running .ca, which is something known as Canada's country code top-level domain. So if you've ever gone to a .ca or registered a .ca for your business or personal use, then you've interacted with CIRA and you qualified to be a member of our organization. As part of our commitment to the internet in Canada and abroad, what we do is manage the infrastructure that's required to keep .cas online. That's DNS services, domain name system, the backend platforms that all of the folks who sell .cas need to connect to confirm it's available. And as part of all that effort, we also give back, and that's part of our Net Good program, to Canadian initiatives that are focused on digital literacy, access to internet, and generally programs that are looking out for the health of the internet in Canada. And that program's a 10-year-old program, $12 million in grants. Our grant window is still open. If anyone's out there looking to kick off a digital project, there might be something there to look into. CIRA's community is pretty diverse from a standpoint of our overall interactions. We work at the international level to help set the standards and regulations that govern the internet. We work with our own government to help advocate for privacy and access to the internet as more regulations are coming into the mix. But in a very direct manner and really relevant to today's conversation, in the cybersecurity space, we do a lot of work across the municipality, university, schools, and healthcare sector, or what we often refer to as the MUSH sector. Those who are tasked with generally a public good generally are looking for more resources because they've got targets, quite frankly, on their back because of the intellectual property they hold, the personally identifiable information, PII they hold. And really, these relationships have to do with us providing services in some cases, providing infrastructure, or just expertise and advice when it comes to the world of the internet. From a cyber perspective, we really look at trying to be a driving force for national infrastructure. When you talk about cybersecurity and cyber defenses, nobody goes it alone. It requires a tapestry of services and providers and knowledge. And CIRA plays a
particular role in that. And we really look at the challenge that we have today from this sort of lens of train, test, protect, and defend. At the end of the day, I think we just saw from Jennifer's presentation at CCCS, huge amounts of energy and time need to be spent in training professionals and general public on how to stay safe online. At the end of the day, when we're doing these types of exercises, you like to test for learning outcomes, just like you do in the education system. You have a test, you check to see what's been retained, and tools like phishing simulations or other cybersecurity tools can be great at doing that. And certainly at other layers, there's about protecting infrastructure, protecting networks, and actively eventually getting to active response or automated responses in the defense of one's infrastructure. These require different tools, different skill sets, different knowledge, and quite often have different organizations that you'll deal with to achieve these things, because you need multiple layers of protection at every stage of this sort of journey. From a CIRA perspective, as we've grown as an organization, as the internet's become a more dangerous place, we come from a mindset that the internet can be a place that generates good, enables people and economies to realize their potential. But there are a lot of problems that the internet also brings to our doorstep, some of which CIRA attempts to help solve for our partners and clients. One of the ways that we focus our efforts and energy is in the human aspect of the challenge. Humans are our best and worst defense when it comes to a lot of the risks that an organization can face. We have a lot of programs that are focused around curriculum driven, workflow driven training, and that is a great way of not necessarily just achieving a baseline set of cyber knowledge within your organization, but doing it in a way that can be programmed to be role specific. Your cybersecurity engineers are going to need a different level of training than your CEO or your CISO, because they're going to face different threats, different attacks, and they are coming into their training with a different set of knowledge. So building programs and taking a systematic approach to this allows you to tailor the training, which becomes more engaging, more meaningful to those who take it, and at the end of the day should generate more retained knowledge and better defenses. Today, CIRA works with about 84 different municipal organizations across the country. Actually, in BC, the Municipal Insurance Association of British Columbia partners with CIRA on cyber awareness and training, and actually our DNS firewall, which I'll talk about in a minute. So if you are a member with MIABC, you actually qualify for discounted services in cyber training and network protection through their programs. And there's one example of a number of member-based initiatives and organizational-based programs that we work to enable across the country. One of the other major challenges that organizations face today is the fact that our businesses are more and more online. Whether or not that's transacting because you have an e-commerce site, you're trying to get information out to your members, constituents, and clients, and you need your web presence there, or you're trying to access a service that's hosted like email or many other things for that matter. Distributed denial of service attacks or these large flooding of web services and websites is something that we've seen grow in frequency and amplitude year over year. These are things which we kind of have to live with. It's the nature these days of the threats. The more and more things we have connected to the internet, the more and more scale there is to launch attacks if devices are compromised. And so having multiple rings of defense, DNS can be a great way of blocking bad traffic before it gets to your location. And this is a service which CIRA has provided for many years and kind of was born out of the networks that was needed to make your .ca work properly. At the same time, that DNS infrastructure can be used to deflect malicious traffic so that it never reaches your servers or your organizations. Again, we have a lot of organizations across the country that provide this to their membership base, and it's a simple to implement tool which can be put sort of in the toolbox on the edge of a network and the edge of your assets, and really makes for a simple defense. We've had lots of success over the years here. The service also helps drive other country code operators, not just .ca, but actually 1/3 of all top level domains on the internet, .org, .net. You know, if you're in the UK, .uk. 1/3 of those use our infrastructure. And so from a CIRA perspective, we're quite proud of that global impact that we make to the resilience and protection of the global internet. And these networks are really meant to soak up attacks. So they do provide great performance improvement throughout the year, but when traffic gets flooded your way, essentially we sync that off and get rid of it so that only good traffic and sort of customers and clients can make it to your location. I think the other major topic, which you can't avoid in any cyber conversation, is malware, botnets, ransomware, and you can toss phishing in there as a mix. A lot of organizations are focused in on programs to help deal with this, but many different ways to sort of tackle this. It's one of the challenges that you have if you're in a municipal space, is you're quite often responsible for infrastructure, which has a very long life cycle. So you think of a water treatment plant, you think of power infrastructure, you even think of infrastructure within universities or schools, which may have a very long upgrade cycle. They may not have been designed to protect against some of the more sophisticated attacks that we see today, or even less sophisticated attacks. So something like a DNS firewall or filtered intrusion detection system can be used on your networks, which are transparent to the devices that you have, and essentially prevent mistakes from happening. So a DNS firewall essentially ensures that when someone clicks onto something bad, or a piece of malware somehow getting onto your machine attempts to connect out to a remote service, it's blocked. And this past year, 416 million attempts were blocked by the CIRA DNS firewall, and that's about 200,000 different malicious sites that come online every day. And so one of the challenges to keep up with these attacks is that the bad actors are constantly registering new sites and new variations, and then making an attack and moving on. And so when we heard Jennifer talk about Aventail and the CCCS threat feed for indications of compromise, this is an example of an organization that is tracking these changes that are going on with malicious sites. And in fact, CIRA's DNS firewall and our Canadian Shield service, which I'll talk about in a minute, consumes that feed. So as well as a number of other commercial feeds. And essentially means that as this crazy race of whack-a-mole is going on, the service is running on your network, making sure that if someone makes a mistake or something gets into your network, its damage is limited in terms of its ability to connect out to things. Program's been a really big success in large part because it's simple to implement. If you're a network administrator, you can make a few configuration changes and protect your entire user base that's connected to that network. And DNS is a great way of filtering traffic, because almost every service you have on your computer and on the internet needs to look up where to find an internet resource, and it uses DNS to do that for the most part. And so this is a great safety net for any organization that's looking to help protect their equipment and their users against these services. Today, 4.2 million users, largely in the education and healthcare sectors, but also a big base in the municipal sector as well, are using the service from CIRA. We take that exact same service and we give it to Canadians at home for free. So if you're not using Canadian Shield today, you're going to take anything away from my presentation, please configure Canadian Shield on your devices, on your kids' families, your parents' devices. It's free, it's performant, it keeps all of your data inside of Canada. So when you make a request for a website, it comes to a CIRA server. We tell you whether or not it's good or not, and your internet resolves. If it's bad, we'll tell you why it's bad, and then you know not to go back to that location. And we make sure your data never gets shipped off to a third party or to another country. And we simply delete that data after you've successfully gone on your way. To date, we've had over 4 million Canadians either download or configure to use the system on a monthly basis. That's our average usage. It's actually by default, one of the services is enabled if you happen to be a Firefox user for your browser. And the key thing here is it's free. It takes advantage of threat intel from folks at CCCS, other commercial partners, and really just allows you to filter out a lot of risk that you would otherwise be exposed to on your internet at home or while you're browsing. It's also a great tool if you're going abroad and you're going to a resort, or you're going somewhere traveling through a lot of public cafes. You can configure your phone to use it and make sure that you're always getting directed to the right bank site, not a fake one. So very simple tool, very powerful one to help protect your personal assets and your business. One last note, I kind of hit it off the top, but wanted to mention it again, is community investment program. As a not-for-profit, when we deliver services and charge for those services, the money that we generate goes back into funding community effort, community programs. And since 2014, our Net Good program does $1 million plus a year of grants and large initiatives, in addition to funding the Canadian Shield service for Canadians. And a lot of this work has to do with engaging in policy engagement. So a lot of folks may be familiar with Bill C-26 or C-27 or other provincial legislation that's hit the books. CIRA does a lot of work to help advocate for individual and business privacy, making sure that as we get more regulation in cybersecurity, it doesn't come at the expense of privacy. We do things like internet performance tests. So you can go to the CIRA performance test on our website and get an independent benchmark of how fast your internet is. It's been a great program. We've had a number of regions actually in BC as well that were able to secure federal funding for new internet service or improved internet services as a result of those metrics. And there's 10 years worth of historical data there, and really allows you to see the change in the internet landscape in Canada over the last decade. I mentioned the grants program. Applications are due very soon, but that program funds a lot of great programs around education, digital literacy, lots of programs that have been very successful and have been a great testament to people's ingenuity and creativity when it comes to providing resources to their own community when it comes to the internet. And so that's a bit about CIRA and what we do from a standpoint of services and delivery. I highly suggest you go to CIRA.ca, take a look. There's a lot going on there, and happy to take questions when we get to that.
Don, thank you so much. I invited you initially because I saw you speak on another webinar, and I had no idea how much CIRA actually did. I loosely knew what CIRA was, but I really appreciate the amount of time and money that you're putting into support, particularly I think for some of our more rural or remote communities. To be able to have access to that is a huge benefit. So thank you to CIRA. Please relay that, and if you can stick around, that's great. And we'll move on to Warren. Warren, are you able to let us know what's going on with the RCMP and how you're working with cybercrime?
Hopefully, it's what I do for a living, so we'll see how that goes. Let me just see if I can share my screen here. Can we see that one okay?
Yes, you're good.
Okay. Okay, so I am Sergeant Warren Krahenbil. I'm the team lead sergeant of the Cybercrime Investigative Team Vancouver and the Cryptocurrency Tactical Operations Support Team. It sounds like a lot, but we're not that big. So I thought I would start with, for the group, kind of see where the RCMP is, where we started. So in this particular region, the Pacific region, we started in 2016 with dark web investigations. So my background in policing is gangs, robbery, break and enter, drugs, criminal intelligence, and literally zero to do with tech. Lucky for me, I've used tech my entire life. I've been embedded in technology as far back as I can remember, but I chose policing for the flexibility and generally the excitement. So I did tech in the background my entire life, and then when we came to 2016 with the dark web, I was able to use my technology ability with undercover operations, Linux virtual machines, Tor, and Bitcoin, and we were able to start working on the dark web with fentanyl. This gave me the opportunity to explain to our bosses that yes, there is technology work that we can do in IT to solve real world problems in policing. We were successful in this. We seized piles of drugs. That on the bottom picture is Constable Fred Kuhn leading someone away. He had approximately, there must have been a kilo of fentanyl in his home at that point. So this is the genesis of cyber in this region for the RCMP. From there, I was able to do a business case, put it together and to explain that there is a problem on the internet when it comes to policing. The RCMP works a little bit slow, as we know that the federal government can be. And after a couple of years, we were able to start an actual cybercrime team. Then there was COVID. We got locked inside, and it was very hard to build from there. So at that point, when COVID kind of ended, we were 5 regular members, 2 analysts, and 1 civilian cybercrime investigator. One thing that we did come up with during those pandemic years was civilian criminal investigators. So we do have civilian tech accredited people that we hire directly from private industry to work with us. They receive a peace officer status. So these are people who can do search warrants, like write them, participate in search warrants, seize things, everything short of a physical arrest, basically, and physical surveillance is what they don't do. So we've built the best of both worlds here, I think. So we have highly trained technical civilians that learn about policing. We have police officers that are embedded in technology that bring that to the technological world. So the team itself, the Cybercrime Investigative Team, we are 5 teams actually across the country. So the RCMP has 3, the original 3 started out east because that's where the home of everything is apparently when it comes to the RCMP. And I'm being facetious, a lot of this is just my opinion, but the 3 original teams started out east, and later the Edmonton team started and our team started in Vancouver. I think total we are about 55 members across the country, maybe 60 at this point. I know our team is expanding fairly rapidly. We are 12 and we should be, I'm hoping 24 in the next year or two. Minimum 24 in the next year or two. The cryptocurrency team is currently 1, and I'm hoping it expands to 4 in the next month or so. So there we are, as the RCMP, building a more robust presence, and we are covering the nation. So we do everything national and international, and from a regional focus. Sorry if I'm going a little fast. I'm not super great with this online stuff. So what do we do as the CITV? So we take everything that's big. So the cyber frauds, we don't see those. Thefts, small scale hacks, they don't come to us. It doesn't really hit my desk until it's something that's quite bad. I think if you're out there, there are some local governments we have worked with. So it's not something that's out of the realm for us. We evaluate everything as it kind of comes to us and what the impact is on Canada and Canadians as far as critical infrastructure. And we do take privacy into account when large-scale data breaches happen, when it comes to the privacy of Canadians and international crime. So I kind of like that post-apocalyptic picture because it does sort of indicate if it hits here, it's definitely not a good thing. So what do we do? So my team specifically focuses on national and international policing. So things that are at a national level and working with international partners. So we participate in joint force operations with everybody in the world, basically. Currently, we're embedded in Operation Endgame. So we're focused on loaders, front-end loaders that attack systems. Our goal with this and working with our partners is to target and disrupt the threat actors at a global level. So when we say that, we say we're not going to go to Russia, Iran, or China to arrest anybody. So how do we affect that? We affect that in the background by working on systems, by attacking certain devices that allow us to intercept the activities of these people. While we do that with our partners, we also share data back and forth for cooperative success. In that sense, we have to leave our ego at the door. So we don't generally get to put hands on people. We don't get to arrest people. We seize a lot of devices. We work on a lot of machines. We work on a lot of networks, but we share those successes with our partners, or we don't share them at all. So a lot of times we do work. We are successful and we just really can't tell anybody. So it just sort of is what it is at this point. The key is to enjoy the job that you do. So that's the CIT on a national and international level. I think that it's rewarding work, but it never gets easy. So what do we need as the CIT from a local government? So as the CCCS member explained, we need to know. So if your agency is attacked, if something occurs, reporting it to the police shouldn't be a question, to be honest with you. Again, this is my opinion. If someone broke into your house, you would call the police. You would let them know. If your neighbor had his house broken into and didn't tell anybody, and subsequently yours was broken into after that, you'd probably be a little upset. So I think I would prefer to sort of put it to the group as a local government that this is a national concern. So if something occurs in your network, granted, you do want to keep your privacy, and we understand that, but we would prefer to at least know, and that helps us in our planning for everybody. What we don't do is, if something does happen in your network, if there's something that occurred, many people think that we're going to show up and start taking over, plugging things in and doing things like that. And that's absolutely not the case. The system that you have, the system that's been built by your IT people, is a one-off. So you built that, you know how it works. The people that work on it daily know how it works best. What we want from that is the information. How can we work from your event when you're breached, not if? When you're breached, how can we work from that event outwards to what happened and outwards to the national and international threat actors that make these things occur? So that's our goal in that kind of scale. We unfortunately don't have the capacity, it's more of a CCCS thing, to help you secure the things that you do. We are more the offense. So our goal is to work that offense, push outwards with our partners, take your information, retaining your privacy, take your information, share that, and see what we can do worldwide. So I'd say for you, secure your networks and invest in that security. One of the things we've come across multiple times is that unfortunately, cutting corners cut security, and those corners sometimes get rounded off, and that's how people get in. So be prepared for these events when they happen, not if. Sorry if I'm going too fast here. Love the picture though. So you, as a leader, this is something I like to touch on when I get to speak to groups like this occasionally, which isn't super often, is that it's one thing for you to look at your organization and one thing to look at your IT security, but look at yourself and your people as the whole into that network. So secure your own profile. Use a password manager. You have no idea how many files we've had come across our desks where passwords, credential stuffing, passwords are reused, and people find their way into critical networks with rehashed passwords. Know the people in your social media circle. It's great to have thousands of friends online, but one of those friends isn't your friend eventually. And think about what you're putting online. I'm not trying to take the fun out of being online or the interest or collaborating with people, but just have that thought process around who exactly am I talking to? What exactly am I putting out there? Am I comfortable with this, with what I'm putting out there? And does this information that I'm putting out there somehow impinge on my work? So that's, and hence the LinkedIn photo there. The LinkedIn is critical for threat actors. On your LinkedIn profile, you'll say what your job is. You'll say what you do, where you work generally, who you work with, who your possible circle is, what your role is in the organization, potentially a username, those type of things. So there is ways to script out an organizational structure from open source data, especially with LinkedIn. And you'll notice, I know some of you know that I do have a LinkedIn profile myself with my picture and my role on there. For me, it's too late. It's been out there for way too long. And I do media occasionally, so I'm done for. But for you, just think about those things. You don't need to pull it back hard, but just have an examination of the things that you are putting out there as a local government leader that may provide insight into you as a leader at work and what your access to those things at work might be. So the last line I put there was examining your business practice. Are those safeguards in place that your financial people aren't sending out money based on an email or sending out money based on a phone call that may be faked? Those type of things. Just again, less of an IT perspective, more of a second guess and a second set of eyes on things that are occurring within your business. Are we covered when the boss is away? Who's in charge? Who's the actor? And what are those things that they're going to ask me to do? So I know when things are out of line and I can become suspicious. So as leaders, we talk about IT security, firewalls, encryption, and those type of things, but you need to know yourself and what may be happening with your own devices. A good example is the recent Signal activity by the US government. Signal is end-to-end encrypted. It's from one end to the other end, no one's going to get in. It's the endpoints that are the problem. So an insecure device provides the access to the things that are going on. Your insecure device at home may have work passwords on it that provide access to your work network. So just things to think about. And I think for local government, it is something that's pertinent and something to examine. I think that's it. So that's me. And I think if you can see it properly, that is my actual email address. I do put that out there. So if there is a question post event, I do realize that as the RCMP, and especially in the work that I do, we're not very accessible. So the first stop is your local police. If that, they may not even know who I am or what I do for a living. It's very possible. I work for the federal government, not the provincial. So I work in the province, but I'm a federal asset. So if things do occur and they're not working out properly, you can try that email. So I'll stick around for any questions, and I do realize that we are a little bit
Well, it's
Okay.
such good information. It's hard to stop people when they're sharing so much. Thank you so much for participating and being so open to it. I think there are a lot of myths around involving the RCMP in a cyber event that might put people off from letting you know. But as you said, you really need to leverage that information to help everyone. So the more sharing that there is, the better. There are two questions that are specific to you, and I think you answered the first one, which is how can we as cybersecurity professionals support the CIT-V? But I think you kind of listed that about doing security, letting you know. And then what resources are available to learn more about your division? Is there a place that you know people can go to, or is it your email address and now your LinkedIn profile?
Yeah, we are not, and again, I see we're fairly opaque.
Yeah.
We're not trying to hide the thing that we do for a living, but we're also not very good at spreading the message. So there isn't really a place where you can go and understand what we do, and but like I said, I'm willing to answer an email for sure. Like I said, we are national, international, so we're not even visible on the provincial stage.
Yeah. Well, and there's a lot of municipal police forces and provincial police forces. I can imagine that coordinating between everyone is a challenge for you as well. And like you say, although I was going to jump in when you showed your post-apocalyptic picture because I hope it's not that. But it is really the thing that comes through to me from all three of you this morning is really that there are so many great resources and people and teams that are out there that are available and willing to help and have resources and information that can be so useful. I know I love the mush sector, John. I always affectionately refer to us as mush sector. But it's a unique environment in that there is very little resources compared to the magnitude of the threats that are out there. So just being made aware of people that you can reach out to, like Warren sharing his email address, given the circumstances is pretty incredible. So we do have a question in there, but I think it's probably beyond the scope of your presentation. So Garish, if you're still listening, I have taken your question. I'm going to send it out to all of our speakers later for a possible response to you for that one. Jennifer, John, and Warren, is there anything else that you want to share? Is any parting comments?
I'll just say it was a pleasure to be on the panel and also be on the panel with folks from two organizations who we work closely with. I think it's important to continue to connect the dots across the country. To your point, Renat, there are a ton of resources and people doing things in different places. And the better we get at connecting the dots between those efforts, the easier the challenge becomes. So just thanks everybody for the opportunity and for the contribution.
Your time is greatly appreciated.
I also appreciate your time, and I appreciate the work that you do in the thought process around preserving people's information and security. So the less work that I have to do, the better.
Hear, hear.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Jennifer?
I'll echo what everybody said already, but thank you for having me and allowing me to give an overview on our services. And if anybody has any questions, happy to reach out to the partnerships team and they'll do their best to respond.
Thank you to all three of you. Really, really important information sharing today. I'm very grateful. And you're welcome to stick around or you can head out. And we were going to take a brief break. So if you do need to go take a bio break, please do. But otherwise, we're going to roll right into our last session with Randy Purse. And Randy is from the Rogers Cybersecure Catalyst. I'm going to let Randy introduce himself. But this session is going to be a little bit different in that we're going to do let's call it a virtual tabletop exercise, perhaps light as opposed to a full tabletop exercise, just to give everyone a sense of the full impact of a cybersecurity incident in any organization. It's going to be more than you think it is. So Randy, take it away.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Thank you very much for inviting me into this. I'm just going to get my slide deck up here. Okay, everybody can see that? All good?
Yes.
Okay. So thanks a lot for inviting me, Renata. And Renata's going to join me here in the dialogue that we have throughout and I'm actually hoping that everybody in the chat also helps to sort of enrich this experience. So at the end of the day, you've heard a lot of things today about, things you should be doing in order to secure yourself. And those are absolutely the things. And I also realize, because I work within the municipal and the broader public sector a lot. That's my primary portfolio. And I understand the constraints you're working in. But I also understand they're diverse, right? You're small, you're medium, you have various business requirements, various technologies, and various infrastructures at your disposal. But you're all facing similar threats. And we see this all the time. And right now, particularly in the broader public sector, municipalities, health services, education, and children's services are some of the examples of things that are getting hit regularly. And even if you have a fairly robust security, which is not the case, by the way, for most broader public sector organizations, but if you have a fairly robust security posture, the likelihood of you getting breached is still high. Right. So you have valuable data, and it doesn't matter how small you are or how big you are, the likelihood of you being a target is high because of the data you have, the value of the data you have. So today we're going to go through a bit of a very short, really abbreviated tabletop experience that sort of emulates some of the tabletop exercises that we do and we prepare for across the municipal space as well as the broader public sector space. So there's Renata, you know her, and then there's me. I'm the Senior Advisor for Cybersecurity Training and Education at Rogers Cybersecure Catalyst. I've been doing cyber for about 20 some odd years now, but focusing on cyber management strategy and, of course, specializing in training education. We don't need to go into my background too much more than that. If you've got questions, by all means, ping me. My email address is at the bottom there. I work for the Rogers Cybersecure Catalyst. We are a nonprofit working out of the Toronto Metropolitan University. We're responsible to them. And we actually are a center for cybersecurity training and education, as well as other factors like innovation. We also work in the policy space. So really good to be here and working on some of this stuff and working with this group. I'd also like you to potentially join me on Slido at 9107045. That way we can potentially we'll have some polling in here, and we'll just get some polling to have some interactivity and also give you some time to respond and think about some of the questions. Okay, let's give everybody another minute for that. Okay, and I've also put it in the chat if you need it. Oh, somebody else has already done that. Thank you very much, Artem. You're very quick on the ball.
It's a team effort in cyber. Everyone's working together.
They've got no choice. Right? We've talked about the constraints, and that's what it's all about. So, okay, good. So what we're going to do now is we're just going to give you a bit overview. What's a tabletop exercise? Many of you have already probably participated in them in some capacity or another. I know these are used a lot in the emergency management space and the business continuity space, and that's exactly what this is. This is an extension of that within the cyber domain. In fact, we're rolling in often with emergency management and business continuity planning and disaster recovery planning. We're rolling in TTXs into those because cyber is recognized as an all-hazard risk that most broader public sector municipal organizations have, and often it does not stay within the walls of the office space. Often there's municipal or community impact. So the TTX is basically, and we're going to go through it today, but a discussion-based activity that we facilitate through to get illicit conversation about what you do. What are your responses? So when we talked about all the security things that you should be doing, fantastic. But if you get hit, if you don't have a plan, Well, there's Benjamin Franklin, I think. It's if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. That's what we're really talking about here. How are you going to move through the incident to minimize the impacts and be able to recover quickly so that you can return to operations? And when you think of what's at risk to your organizations, if you don't have a plan to do this, what can happen? What are the harms that are potentially happening if cyber systems, if digital systems in the municipality or in the public sector organization you're in are all of a sudden unavailable, right? Or corrupted, or the data is stolen? What are the impacts? That's really what we want to get down to here. So
Randy, one of the things that always occurs to me is, when I conceptualize of a cyber incident, you think about, okay, there's something happening and I've got to go deal with that. And wouldn't it be lovely if you're sitting in a room by yourself or with your team, quietly managing the situation with no other inputs or people asking you what's going on or systems going down and then clients or your residents contacting you? It never is going to happen in a pristine white room.
That's right. That's right. And really sort of understanding what you need to do, how your organization works, your workflows, and utmost is your organizational priorities. Okay. If you're dealing with a mayor or a CAO or a council, what are their priorities going to be versus the technical priorities? And this is really something that should get sort of figured out before you go into an incident. Because once you're in an incident, you're in crisis mode, and it's very difficult to manage. So that's why we do these tabletop exercises. We do them for a variety of things, but generally these tabletop exercises are to help people sort of figure out what their team is. So, okay. So in this exercise, just let's go in with an open mind. Don't fight the scenario. It's of course it's artificial in its case because of the way things are here. If we were to do this for your municipality, we would tailor it for you. Think critical about your municipal or organizational context. Think about the key organizational cyber risks as we go through here. And this is where a lot of problems are within incident response planning, is organizations don't understand and haven't contextualized the cyber risks in terms of business or organizational risks. So that's really important. And as we go through this, if you don't know, then that's potentially a gap. Explore it when we get done. Okay. So now we're going to begin the experience. So first things first, somebody in your administrative office clicked on a package tracker. This is a typical phishing thing, and an A to Z courier in this case is a reputable courier company, but their email has been used as a front for a click. For a phishing attack on the package tracker that opens an exe file, and all of a sudden, next thing you know, you've got this. Okay, your files have been encrypted with a special key. They're looking for $500,000 in Bitcoin. Most of us wouldn't be able to muster up $500,000. That's a big ask. But how many of you would be able to figure it out in Bitcoin, right? That's the other thing. That's a challenge here.
How do you even buy Bitcoin if you're not already buying Bitcoin? And most municipalities, except maybe Vancouver, are not.
Exactly. That's just it. So there's a process. There's things you need to think about. So that's a great question, Renata. And you understand the threats here is if you try to recover the files yourself, or if you don't pay, they're going to destroy all the files. And if say it's your administrative server, what's on that, right? What kind of data is on an administrative server within your organization? You're talking potentially financial data, is certainly employee data, other HR data, maybe other, depending on take the worst case scenario about what your data could be, and add that here, and think about that as the potential for that data either to be disrupted, taken, or simply not available, right? And these are the challenges that we need to be planning for, so that we take the appropriate measures, we identify workarounds, we identify our backups, these types of things. In this, you'll note that there's a little thing here that says, if you have any difficulty, click the contact us link. And one of the things that ransomware groups are famous for is their customer service. They want to get their money, and they're okay with that. Now, whether they'll ever actually help you out of a bind or not is another story, but there are instances where we've seen that there is a bit of honor among thieves, and if you're struggling to get Bitcoin to them, they'll help you. Honestly, they'll help you try to figure that out. That's how good they are, right? Really good in heart. But they
Cybercrime
have,
as a service is real.
it is very real. Yeah, and they're serious about it, and so they're going to try to take things, try to make sure that they get to their goal, which is collecting the money from you as efficiently as possible. So they don't want any impediments. So the first question is, do you have an up-to-date cyber incident response plan? So go to Slido and just answer if you have a up-to-date incident response plan. Okay, we'll give it another 30 seconds or so. For the yeses, and it's in development, fantastic. At least you're thinking about it and you're looking at processes within your organization. For those who said no, that I would encourage you to think about it or start working with people. What we're seeing a lot, particularly within the municipal sector, is working with the emergency management team, right? Whoever is in emergency management, because they're actually going to be probably some of the decision makers around the table when it comes to incident response. So maybe collaborating with business continuity and emergency management to try to come up with something. You don't have to have a standalone incident response plan. You can actually build cyber incident response into emergency management or business continuity as well.
I think the people who do business continuity or emergency management, depending on how it's termed within that organization, are probably a really good contact person regardless, because they are going to be connected with all the departments that might be impacted by a regular emergency. I know in a lot of our conversations, a lot of municipalities are really focused on wildfire or flood, or here in BC, earthquake response. But cyber it should be part of that conversation as well. And really it's not just an IT issue, it's much more broad.
It is, and just think about it in this regard. It's the risk that the organization is holding, and I don't care who you are, the CIO, and I love CIOs. I work with them all the time, but the CIO isn't actually the ultimate risk holder of the organization. The risk holder will be in municipalities. It'll be the mayor or the council, potentially the CAO or clerk. You know, those are the kind of people that are actually have to make the decisions about risk and where they're going to invest cybersecurity investments, and where they're going to put their energies should they be attacked. So these are the people that need to be engaged in that discussion. And yes, Renata, you're absolutely right. The people that are involved in the business continuity and emergency management team, they're the ones that are around the table typically. And we'll get into some other discussions around those sort of coordinating effects as we move through this scenario. Good. Okay. So when we're talking about this ransomware attack, some of the questions are, what are your immediate concerns about a ransomware attack, right? What risks are exposed as a result of this ransomware attack? We already talked about it. Data, what kind of data is gone, or what kind of data could be gone. What does a ransomware mean? What does it mean to the organization to be ransomware, and what kind of impacts is that going to have on operations, right? These are matter. Who's responding? If you don't have a plan, you don't know who's responding. And if it's a third-party service, fantastic. But how are they responding, and how are they responding in terms of your priorities? Have those agreements been set, right? And how do you know who's going to be responding? What kind of escalation process and reporting process do you have up, right? So if you're a CAO, or if you're a clerk, or if you're a senior administrative official within the organization, how do you know who's responding, and how do you know what kind of reporting is going to come to you when you know something is going on, right? So those communication lines internal are going to be really important to figure out, so that you could properly assess the risk and figure out what the organization should be doing. At the technical layer, the CIOs, the cyber teams, the IT managers, whomever, need to be doing stuff for sure, but there's always going to be an organizational impact that you need to understand.
When we started looking at ours, I was surprised at what a big role the communications piece plays. One of the first questions that came up was, well, who decides, when we decide to enact our plan, who decides and at what point? And my boss, who's the CEO, he says, well, that's up to me. And I said, but you travel a lot. Like, what if you're not here? What if you're in a different time zone? How are we going to communicate if we're concerned about our system being compromised? We have to agree on a communication channel that maybe isn't Teams or Outlook. So there were so many elements of the plan that we literally were stopped in our tracks by figuring out the communication piece and the who's responding and how do you know?
Yep, workflows in crisis, and understanding, as you just said, if somebody isn't available, who's the alternate?
Yeah.
What are their communication flows? And often when you're looking at this problem, if you're ransomware, the technical response is almost immediately to unplug from the internet. Okay, so that means all internet enabled communications that you have going through your network are no longer available. So what do you have? Often we revert to personal cell phones, right? So are those reliable? Are those things you can trust? Do you have Signal? Not that maybe Signal isn't, but there are applications that you could use, right, that will help you with communication. So having alternate communication workarounds, understanding that you may not have communications if you disconnect from the internet. So those are all good. Redundancies is good. Okay, so first responders assessment. The one thing we know about ransomware is sometimes there's also a lot of ransomware emails that come up. Well, not a lot, but there's some that are not legitimate. They're just going to extort money from you, and they actually haven't actually locked down your servers. So you're thinking about and moving into crisis when you actually don't have a crisis yet. So getting your technical team or your third party to first identify that it's legitimate and we're good, right? So, and the first thing that the technical team is going to be doing is containing it, right? They're going to be unplugging from the internet. They're going to be locking down the servers themselves, stopping any potential lateral flow. So ransom payment is another thing that's of import to us. As the Cyber Center folks said, ransomware is still a high level threat to us. And what are the circumstances that you're going to have? Now, I'm not saying have a written down policy about ransomware payment, but at least discuss it around the table that you just finished talking about, Renata. The senior leadership. Okay, what are the risks to paying and not paying? There's risks to paying and there's risks to not paying, right? There's reputational risk, there's financial risk, and these are not IT risks, right? These are organizational risks. So senior leaders in the organization need to understand, what does it mean to pay the ransom, right? Paying the ransom means that you're sustaining criminal activity. There isn't a government representative that encourages you to pay ransom. However, what's going on? What is at risk? Is it better to pay the ransom if you have a high level of confidence that your data will be restored, right? Those are the kind of questions you need to have, or the questions you need to answer. There's risks to not paying the ransom. You may never retrieve your data, right? So this goes into saying, what are the risks to not paying the ransom? Well, you can mitigate some of those risks by ensuring you have good backups, right? So if you're not going to pay the ransom and you're going to come down hard on that, you better have ways that you can recover and get back to normal operations without having to pay the ransom. So that's how these decisions need to be made. And if senior leaders understand, okay, we're not going to pay the ransom. Okay, well, then we need to have processes in place that will help ensure continuity of operations. And that's where the cybersecurity investment decisions come in, right?
And you don't want to be having those conversations in the moment when you have a real ransomware request in front of you. You want to have the answer to that well before.
Yeah. 100%. And then cyber insurance, right? What is the level of coverage, right? When you're talking about this stuff, okay, I don't know how many of you have heard about the Hamilton incident. I'm pretty sure everybody has heard about the Hamilton incident. Okay, the initial costs, the initial upfront costs after a month or so was about $12 million. Okay, but the damage was far exceeded that. And I think there's some estimates that are double or triple that at this point. And the challenge here is how much of that will be covered by insurance? How much of it are you going to have to try to figure out of capital budget or whatever budget you have available? And at the end of the day, if you have cyber insurance, the plus there is that often they have resources and assets that you can get to, right? The cybersecurity specialized services, advisors and things like that can help you. But certainly figuring this out beforehand, whether cyber insurance makes sense to you or not, is a good thing to do before you get into an incident.
Yeah.
And if you choose to pay, we talked about the Bitcoin. If you choose to pay, what would be the process, right? How do you get Bitcoin? Who has the Bitcoin card, right? Who's going to go to the Bitcoin ATM, right? That kind of process is kind of important to weave out, because if you got this one in this ransomware incident, you have 72 hours to pay. That's actually quite luxurious. If you only had 24 hours to pay, how are you going to pay? If you got to put in a bunch of different protocols within the organization and authorities in order to pay that, how are you going to pay it? But the same would go for any kind of emergency services. What are the protocols for funding and paying for kinds of cybersecurity specialist expertise and things like that in the heat of the moment? Okay. So quick technical update from your IT team. Triage has been conducted. Doesn't appear to be any other issues. Technical response team believe that they have the ransomware contained. So it all looks good, right? Things are starting. They've contained the incident. That doesn't mean you're back in operations. It doesn't mean you have internet capability. It does. So you're still, and you're 30 minutes in. That's still way early. Things haven't really started to run downhill in your organization yet. Uh-oh. Social media, the bane of our existence, right? So first one from Mary. She's in your organization, right? She's saying, hey, all work has stopped in my office. I'm not sure I'm still here. I could probably work from home if they would just let me, right? That's a common complaint, right? So when we're looking at an incident, what happens to the people in the organization? What are they doing? And the larger you become, if you have a large municipality or if you're a city, you'll have a lot of employees, and some of them may be unionized, and you may be limited in what you could do with those employees. So what are you going to do with them? And what have you communicated to them about communicating about an incident, right? So the last thing you need your employees to be doing is actually on Twitter or on X talking about this, giving a blow-by-blow to the public about what's been going on in your house.
Oh, no.
Yeah. And then the next one, Dave the Knave, Mayor Watch, right? There's always people in this space, in the political space, looking for problems, right? So why haven't they said anything? What are they hiding? What kind of conspiracy is? So these are two things that'll pop up on your radar almost right away as soon as somebody hears you've got an incident. And then there's the mainstream media, right? What's happening? What's this gonna, so when you're thinking about these things showing up, and you and the mayor, the CAO, the communications folks, they aren't prepared for this yet, right? All of a sudden this is happening, and this is happening outside of the typical news cycle within your municipality or within your city. And now you need to find a way to respond to this. So, the questions come up. Whoops. Let's ask the first question. Do you have a communication protocol that includes a cyber attack? Okay, give it another 30 seconds or so.
Interesting too, in the media, so often when there's no information, the statement is, we don't know yet if your stuff has been compromised.
Yeah.
So instead of saying, stay tuned for further details, or we're waiting on a comment, or the mayor will address the public at 4 o'clock this afternoon, it's right away, let's go to DEFCON 5 or 1. I can never remember which one's higher.
Yeah.
But let's go to the worst possible scenario and plant that seed of fear. So you know that it's coming.
100%. Yeah, and I use the phrase all the time in the tabletop exercises when we're dealing with communications, particularly in the municipal layer and government layer, as judicious use of the truth, right? So make sure you got to tell the truth. You can't be using too much foresight because you don't know what's going to happen next.
Yeah.
So really be judicious with the truth. Be very careful about what you say, but do say something, right? Do tell them, hey,
Yeah.
we're looking into it. It's under investigation. We'll let you know when we know more. And so that they understand. And then the other thing is getting ahead of the news cycle. So many of you do, many of you don't. But an important thing here from communication protocol for cyber attack is if you're already a municipality or a government office, you probably already have emergency management or business continuity, and there's already communication lines probably set for those. All you need to do is add cyber into your communication protocols and add some scripts for cyber attacks. And that will be a big plus, right? And the mere fact that you're doing those and you're developing them with the team means that everybody's going to have a better understanding of what's going to be said in the event of a cyber attack. And that makes everybody feel much better. Okay, good. So the communications thing is, let's have a plan to communicate on cyber attacks. And so many of you have that in place. So now we've had a ransomware. We're 6 hours in, and it's been discovered there's been exfiltration of data discovered from the attack server. So that means they've been taking the data out of the server, and the technical team has found this out, and they're doing additional containment activities. Your hair shouldn't be on fire if you discover you have a ransomware attack. Okay, your technical team should generally, when your hair starts to go on fire is when all of a sudden it's out there and you got reputational risk because there's a big communications issue. This is the second time your hair should be on fire, is when you find out your data is being exfiltrated, right? This involves likely privacy issues, which must be reported. It may involve operational data that could be sensitive in nature. It could be any number of things. And in the case of Hamilton, there were a lot of different data that were attacked, including planning data, right? So when you look at this, what are the impacts to that data not being there, being unavailable, or being disrupted? You're now moving into a longer term crisis as a result of this. So when you're talking about data exfiltration, think about this and think about the different types of data you have in your organization. They all don't need the same level of protection. And one of the things I've seen in cybersecurity a lot is everybody thinks cybersecurity is one big thing, right? And you do it all. Well, in organizations like yours, where we have, different levels of expertise, probably more limited budgets, limited availability of resources to tackle these challenges, we really do need to prioritize where we're going to put our protections. And so thinking about what data is at risk, what kind of priorities we need to be placing on protection around critical data and critical systems matters. It really, really matters. And those are the things that should be driving our decisions. So when we're looking at an incident and we suspect that, our privacy data or our tax roll data or our operational data or our water systems data is going to be at risk, well, then those are the things we need to be looking at. Okay, where are they? How do we protect it? And that's really helpful. Plus, that identification of that data will allow you to figure out if there's an incident, what the potential impact is, because you'll know where the sensitive data resides. You won't be trying to figure this out at the last minute. If somebody exfiltrates data from a server, you'll know what data is gone. Not right now. Most organizations don't have any I shouldn't be too harsh here, but data management isn't their forte. So, and understanding the sensitivities and the value of that data isn't necessarily well articulated within the organization. So when we're talking about data segmentation and thinking about where the data resides, how we back up that data, how we isolate the backups to that data so they can't be affected, these all matter. So thinking about these things are really important. So when you're looking at the potential breach scenarios, this helps you to sort of reverse engineer back into, okay, what would really give us heartburn? What do we need to protect?
Yeah. I think that's the benefit of doing an exercise like this is exactly what you said at the outset. You're looking for gaps. So if you get to this point and the question is posed, you realize, well, geez, we don't actually, allocate certain designations to certain data and have decided, this is categorized as sensitive and this is categorized as not sensitive. If you haven't done that work in advance, then this becomes exponentially more difficult.
Yeah, if it's all in one server under one file says important data, you've got a problem on your
Oh
hand.
dear.
So, that's right. So yeah, so it's keeping an idea of what what data is important and how you need to protect it. So that, like you said, doing these exercises is really important to sort of factor in those things and what kind of workflows you have for how are you going to remediate the situation in the midst of an incident as well if that data is corrupted. And that's when we get into recovery and such. So your technical update, fast forward 42 hours, they severed the connection to the internet. They're going and accounting of data leakage. And by the way, data audits after incidents, if you have no accounting of your data at the first place, is incredibly difficult. you don't know what data's gone. It's very troubling to the organization because they just don't know what's been leaked. Here's a point. The team has been continuing to work for 24/7. So going back to some of the messaging earlier in your day today about the human interactions and the challenges around talent within your organization, think about this. In an incident, if you're working 24/7 and you're 3 days in, you're already burning out those resources. So what are you going to do? What are the alternatives there? Who's going to help these people? Workarounds are in place, so you're maybe receiving some calls from the public, you're doing some things. Backups and recovery procedures are being tested, and third-party forensics is going on. So these are the things happening in 42 hours. Great, things are progressing, but we're 2 days in already, right? So then we're starting to talk, okay, we've contained the incident, now we got to recover. We're trying to figure out how we're going to recover, right? If there's one thing that we know from ransomware incidents, is that if you don't have a reliable, safe, secure, tested backup, you're in trouble. You're going to, the mere fact is your likelihood is you're going to either have to pay the ransom to try to get your data back, and that's never guaranteed, or you're going to have to start from scratch. Right. And we've seen both cases and it's a struggle. So making sure that you have backups in place, but not only the backups, that you can actually recover from those backups.
Yeah.
It's amazing that, oh yeah, we got backups here, there, and everywhere. Great. Do you have the technical expertise to be able to safely and securely recover from backup?
And
right?
do you know how?
Yeah.
It's not something that I think is tested all the time routinely. And it's not always easy to test a full restore from backup when you have your ongoing production environments, your live environments. So it's not an easy thing to test. So I can imagine that there are some of us out there who really could use a good full restore from backup.
Yeah, and one of the other things is this is one of these things that's only seen to be a technical issue, but I agree with Dominic about this. A cyber is not just a technical problem. Who are the people that are most likely to be able to tell you whether software is working correctly and it is working with the right data?
Yeah.
It's not going to be the technical folks.
No.
It's going to be the business folks, right?
Yeah.
So they're involved in the recovery process and making sure that they understand how this is going to occur. And most recovery is very stepwise, right? It's not, oh, we're going to bring everything up on a line. No, it happens. Okay, we're going to put in this operating system first, make sure it's working. Then we're going to add this application and we're going to test it and we're going to make sure it works. And so it takes often days, if not weeks, to get fully recovered. And the other thing
one of the things we encountered when we started working on our incident response plan is the expectation of people who were not in our technology area of how quickly things come back up was shockingly fast. And you know, they just did not appreciate it. So it kind of goes back to that, you know, even what Hawkeye and Liam were saying in our first presentation about engaging with people and letting them know like what are the ramifications and what are the parameters that they need to be aware of. Like you can't just like push a button and oh poof, everything's back up again. You know, if they understand how they can be supportive and what types of activities are being undertaken by the technology people, then they can be supportive and they can alert to things like, hey, something's not right over here, or let me go get that for you, or even can I bring you a coffee?
Yeah, for sure. And I think that you're absolutely right. And I think some of the challenges in this space are also about, you know, you got to do this safely and securely.
Yes.
If you don't do it, if you don't test it, and if you don't follow the processes, what will happen is you may even be in more trouble after the fact. So you really want to do this smoothly so that you could return to not only normal operations, but I would say better operations. So you
Yes.
ensure the security controls are in place that caused the problem in the first place. So you should be better off as a result of this experience and you know, understanding organizational resilience and saying, okay, we had a problem, but let's make sure that we're not only able to address this problem, but we're far less likely to encounter this kind of attack and the same sort of consequences in the future. So fast forward 27 days, okay? Full backup from recovery completed, incident is closed, system is operational, but some cleanup continues, some precautionary monitoring is ongoing. What's important here is to realize this is 27 days to get you to a point where you're almost fully operational. So you've been out of complete service for a month, right? You have degraded service for a month, and you need to start planning for that. Incident response plan can help you reduce that time, but if you get breached, you may be able to recover quite quickly if everything is in place. If not, or if something happens, or if it happens on a Friday night and you can't get anybody in the office till Monday, you could be looking at an extended period of time. So keep in mind that this is not a short evolution. As you said, Renata, it's just not about pushing a button and all of a sudden everything is fine. It's a long process. And the whole time you're dealing with communications protocols, you're dealing with challenges with operational processes and workflows, you're dealing with IT issues, you're dealing with the 24/7 experience of the IT team, you're dealing with third parties, you're potentially dealing with you know, public inquiries and media inquiries. So everybody, it's amped up for that entire time frame, and it's a struggle for most people. So here we are. I know this has been very fast, but we've gone through the effort. At 27 days, you know, we're sort of getting our feet back on the ground and we understand what's happening, but we should basically exercise some, you know, understanding of what organizational resilience is all about, and doing post-incident analysis, learning from what happened, how we're going to incorporate those learnings into our processes so that we won't have those problems again. And one of the scarier parts is bullet number 3 there, how the costs be tallied and absorbed into the budget, right? Not many of us have a few $1 million in the back pocket to, as you know, to delve into crisis. And the big challenge here, particularly within the municipal or the broader public sector space, is, okay, how do I balance these things, this budget reality, against all the projects I have within the organization? So if we're dealing with housing, we're dealing with fentanyl crisis, we're dealing with home care problems, we're dealing with healthcare problems, you know, the sky's the limit here, right? Trying to figure out what kind of issues now you're going to have to deal with because you no longer have the budget to do all these things. So this is a good lesson at this point of the tabletop exercise to say we should be doing everything that we can within our constraints to secure our systems and our data from the primary threats, so that we can at least have some confidence that we can weather the storm and that we have a plan in place to do this.
I think that when we were first talking about you speaking today, my original title was Before, During, and After. And it really, to me, it's about, you know, what can you do in advance to secure and prepare. So, you know, all of these ideas about communications plans and having, you know, your data classified and so on. And then during, you have the plan, you're acting on the plan, people are working with you. And then after, taking away those lessons, recovering, demonstrating resilience, it's so significant. It's not just, you know, I think in cyber, it used to be like prevent any possible intrusion. So it was all about the defense, but now it really is a much more holistic approach.
100%. So that's the end of the tabletop. I know it's very quick, but we did get you to a bunch of questions, and I just want to provide some key takeaways for you. Have a plan. Consider different threat scenarios, and I would recommend 3 to 4 or 5 scenarios. You know, ransomware, an active hack, a flood, you know, that takes out your server room, insider threat, so that you have a plan and you know the plan is can be agile. It can address those scenarios. Know who's on your team, what roles they play. So have a policy in place to do that. Know who else you need, right? What kind of who else you're going to be needing, like what kind of third-party support are you going to need? Or maybe you can share resources amongst municipalities. Understand reporting requirements, including to law enforcement, for all the reasons Warren pointed out, right? There's a lot of good reasons to report to law enforcement. Plus, they have intel that they can maybe provide you and make your life just a little bit easier if you get a ransomware attack. Sometimes they may even have access to resources from FBI, DHS, Europol that have the decryption key, as an example. That's happened before. So, and make sure you find some way to manage the narrative and the communication space. Those are the 5 big takeaways. So, to end this off, have you conducted an organizational TTX, not just an IT TTX? Those happen, and we do those too, but have you conducted an organizational TTX?
It's definitely not something that I had considered until we talked, because we talk a lot about what my very small team is going to do and who we can tap into to help. But just from when we started talking about it with this disagreement, I guess, or misunderstanding about who should take what role and what the communications piece was going to look like was significant to me. And it definitely means that this type of activity should be something where we include many more people in that exercise for sure.
And we're seeing more and more organizations, particularly in the municipal or broader public sector space, combine this with their emergency management planning. Take a cyber threat, escalate it beyond the municipal walls, and you'll be able to answer all those questions. Plus, it gets, you know, written off under emergency management or compliance, whatever you need to do in that space. So I would really encourage you to do it, because as we've gone through here in the last, you know, 27 minutes or so, the issue is that they're things, this evolution, like when we do these, are normally 2.5 hours to 3 hours with the municipality. It's tailored to their needs, and we get to answer all these questions as we're doing it. So it's really helpful.
So to clarify, the Catalyst actually will do these as a service that people can purchase from the Catalyst, and you'll run the tabletop for them, right?
Yeah, and we provide a summary report at the end, and it really provides our observations, but it's really insightful. It's not a really high cost, you know, between $8,000 to $12,000 depending on the requirements. And at the end of the day, it's a really big investment, because even if you find out 2 or 3 gaps that you need to close, once you close those gaps, you already have ROI for the exercise. And I know it sounds trite, but that's the reality, right? Because these are, you know, it's the prevention versus the prevention is hugely important here. And this is one of your preventative steps. If you wait until the crisis happens and then say, well, you know what, maybe we should have had one of these. Okay, you know, $5 million later, maybe you should have spent, you know, $10,000 on a tabletop exercise.
Well, and I do think it's valuable as well to have someone external to your organization run the exercise, because invariably you are not going to think of everything that might actually impact you. And that to me is 50% of the benefit is somebody else giving you some insight.
Yeah, and the other thing we see is depending on how they're done internally, I mean, all teams are different, but there are some places where if they were to do it internally, there are power plays or power structures at the table that come into play, right? And the challenge is, how do we speak honestly around this issue unless that issue has been brought out onto the table, right? And really, that's where we find our role is key here. So it doesn't matter whether you're the mayor or you're an admin clerk or you're the IT help desk guy. At the end of the day, your opinion matters in this kind of context. And so how do we make sure everybody's reading from the same song sheet as we move through? So any rate, it's been a real pleasure. I hope everybody's got something out of it. My name is at the beginning of it, and this is the catalyst. Email is at the back end. I certainly appreciate the time, Renata. I don't know if we have time for questions. Happy to answer them if anybody has any questions.
Let me just see if anybody else is. I don't see any questions, but I know, so one of the offers that I make is if anyone has a question that was not answered during any of our presentations today, that they're welcome to send it to me, and I would be happy to forward it on to you all to see what kind of answer we can get back. Also, there's a recording, so if questions come up after people watch the recording, then very much welcome anybody emailing me or any of the participants to forward that question on.
Excellent.
All right. Well, thank you, Randy. And I will just finish this off. I'm going to pop up my screen. If anyone has any feedback, any questions that weren't answered, any ideas, we're going to run another one of these sessions in the fall, probably September. And I would love to know who has cool things to talk about that we can share and help everyone do a better job on their cybersecurity journeys. So on behalf of the Municipal Finance Authority, MFA for short, and our partners at ISACA Vancouver, thank you so much for attending, and thank you to all of our speakers for the excellent information today. I hope everybody has a great rest of their day, and in BC, go enjoy your lunch. Bye for now.